Maybe. What's the texture? We don't know.
I think we have an idea. I think you can make some guesswork.
I'm gonna set that out.
Kind of pasty.
Oh my God.
Hasty and tasty.
To this Wednesday edition of the Tip Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 11-game NBA slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. Joining me once again, we have Eric Lindquist and Chris Spags. Guys, how are we doing today?
Feeling good. I feel like we had some good banter before the show. That was probably for the best. It wasn't on a hot mic, but I feel like it's a large slate today. We only have a 45-minute show, so hopefully James Harden doesn't hold us hostage all day today again, but I feel pretty good about how it's looking.
Yeah, they didn't kick us out of here, which is great after yesterday and the horses. Oh, the horses. Kayla, so great to see you again. You look much more calm than you did yesterday. This is nice.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you to the viewer who tweeted us all the picture of the reaction. If you listened yesterday, you know what we're talking about. If not, go back and watch it because it was one for the books.
I had to speak very slowly there and make sure that I didn't allude directly to it. But if you go back and watch her, if you know, that's probably what the kids would say.
It's exactly what the kids would say. All right, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that is in season. Really quick, we want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. All right, guys. James Harden gave us all a headache yesterday. Let's talk last night's slate and about James Harden's injury and ultimately playing, hanging over our head the entire night. How did you guys both make out?
Not as good as Gene B. Kim and Rinpack. I know that. I had a sweat going on FanDuel until Korkmaz got benched after playing like 30 seconds basically in the fourth quarter. And they're like, nope, we're going to bring Thibault back in. And he covered Jordan Poole, who was my other guy that I needed to have go off. And so I got all of 0 points from them halfway through the third quarter up until the end of the game, whereas Tony Bradley and Tobias Harris just went off. So congrats to both of them. Nice little night over on FanDuel. Not that I'm surprised by either of them.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot recently about my playing more on FanDuel and I'm not doing live before lock shows. And I have to say, I just came up with the perfect analogy as I did yesterday too, that led to that shock reaction moment here on the show. But for me, like DraftKings is a lot like a parent who you make one mistake and they're just kicking you out in the streets. They're going, hey, you're done here. Your money's no good here. We don't want you anymore. For FanDuel, when I make a mistake on FanDuel, even if I'm playing a 150 max and happened, as I mentioned on the late slate show yesterday, ended up playing 70% Michael Carter-Williams just because of the moving parts there with Chase Randall, Terrence Ross getting ruled out last minute. Didn't love that play when I saw it happen, but besides that, or despite that, still ended up having a nice day. And I feel like that's what FanDuel does. It brings you in. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy, makes me feel like I belong, even when I'm making colossal mistakes. So I feel like that's how I felt last night. And hopefully today, less colossal mistakes, more positive things, and more winning, really, whether we're playing on No House Advantage or DraftKings and FanDuel.
You make a good point about FanDuel. I love when I make my lineup and they say, great lineup, Kayla.
Positive reinforcement goes a long way. Yeah.
Jinx.
Yeah. Whereas DraftKings, It's just like, oh, it's a little birdie flying out. It's gone. Money. They
never tell me I did a good job, and that just makes me question my lineup.
It's very true.
Let's get to today's key news. We've got a lot. James Harden is questionable once again with his neck issues, with Kyrie Irving remaining out for the Nets for at least the next 2 games. Spags, how are you handling the situation tonight versus Utah and a much larger slate?
I think I will still be heavy on James Harden. I would like to believe that with my sorting process, I'm not going to be as completely dependent as it was yesterday, where it was a 6-game slate. You have less options. Harden looked like a smash play, ended up being a smash play even with the neck issues. But I have to think if he played through the front end of the back-to-back with whatever neck issues, and on a late slate show, our pal Greg Ehrenberg was on there watching workout videos of Harden and determining how loose or tight his neck looked based upon that. He was smiling and laughing in the pregame. We got that news with enough time to not be too affected on the late slate. And I think today it's not a great matchup against Utah, but still the usage for Harden, tremendous 35% usage, of 50% assist rate, rebound rate also around 15%. So that's one that should be there, maybe a little bit less against Utah, but still be noteworthy for him. He's really the only play I think you can trust on the Nets today. So I'll be there heavy. I think maybe not as heavy as last night, just because you probably won't need him as much because it is an 11 gamer.
I mean, I can't believe the ownership that TLC is garnering right now. I know that he ended up getting reinserted into the rotation. It was somebody that I would have had interest in had James Harden sat, because they need to find some offense in different directions. But we're seeing north of 30% right now on DraftKings, which is an astounding number for him on this large of a slate. Obviously, if James Harden sits, which I actually think there's a much larger likelihood of that happening today against Utah in a game that they're already big favorites to lose. They're big underdogs, should I say. I'm pretty sure that this has more risk of him not playing. So obviously once that news comes across, if he is out, you're going to be jamming in a lot of these pieces in this slate. Even on an 11 gamer is going to be super Nets heavy. Same situation that we had yesterday. And if he plays, he will be the only piece that I'm probably really going to.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will be out for the Thunder, while possible trade candidate Al Horford is expected to play. There aren't any crazy value plays from OKC, so Eric, who looks good, if anyone, versus Memphis tonight?
So I think it's a tale of two sites. We're looking at DraftKings, and I think Al Horford's really the only guy that I want to do. Did you like that Charles Dickens drop? I don't know.
I did.
Okay, there we are. I really like the Al Horford play on DraftKings because he is 6,100, and you can play two centers over there, and there is that upside. This is just one of the strangest days that you're going to have. You're going to have weird things that happen between now and lock. I find that hard to think that we won't have some news come out, somebody getting limited, teams trying to figure out who's going to be moving where going into tomorrow. I believe last year, this is kind of like right about the rumblings, like as everything started the day before, and we didn't see anything really come to fruition until the next morning. Maybe that happens again, but I would just make sure you're following News God. Make sure that you're following the @Awesemo NBA account nonstop, because something weird could happen at any given moment. Al Horford's one of those guys on the list. So going that direction on DraftKings would be fine. You know, maybe quote unquote showcase game. Everybody tries to find that narrative. Over on FanDuel, the prices are just so much better and so much more advantageous. Isaiah Roby's 4,700 there. Lugens Dort is going to be back 4,900. Moses Brown is guy you can obviously take shots on at that same center position, who's still sitting underneath 5K. Yeah, it's just a massive slate. And I know that some of these pieces are going to be intriguing. Dort's probably the guy that I'm going to the most right now on DraftKings, just because he's at small forward.
I think for me, I don't see there being a lot of great values for the Thunder, even on DK or FanDuel, really whatever site, because these guys aren't the super cheap plays anymore, where we had a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month and change now, where we had no Thunder players left. All the Thunder guys were around 3K to 4K. They were all super cheap. Now they're all around 5,000, whether it be on DraftKings or FanDuel, sometimes upwards of 6,000. Even Ty Jerome on DraftKings, just shy of $5,000. And I think, to me, that's a spot where you're probably overpaying for these guys. And with Horford in, I think that there is a degree of risk there that Horford takes a lot of production. Maladon's going to take some more production, but still be kind of squeezed by Ty Jerome in a way that I think caps his ceiling. I just don't love any of the plays. And I know with a guy like SGA out, a 30% use rate guy, 30% assist rate guy, who's been one of their better players, you want to get normally to some of the other guys out there, but I think you're kind of having to squint your eyes and trying to force your way to them to make it make sense. So I think right now, if Horford's going to be in, and as Eric mentioned, you got to watch that news closely as we get closer to lock, because he's the kind of guy where if there are trade talks that heat up over the next 4 hours, they could pull Horford just to not risk injury in this game against Memphis, where he's going to get banged around a lot. So I think in this spot right now, it doesn't look great, but could be changing, could be wild. And I think either way, you're probably not making these guys rotational or core parts of your build, because they could honestly, you wouldn't shock me to see any of them get traded today, just because of the fact that it is a trade deadline and the Thunder want to have 50 million picks over the next 5 years.
Yes, we do. Giannis is questionable today after multiple Bucks had their best games of the year last time for Milwaukee with him out. So Spags, do you think Giannis plays today? And if so, who benefits if he's out again versus Boston?
So I think if he plays today, he looks like the best play by far. Drew Holiday was the guy who I think really stood out to me, where historically it's been Chris Middleton picking up a lot of production when it was Eric Bledsoe on the team, because for whatever reason, Bledsoe would be fine. I think his rates take a pretty good jump, and he would still be a guy who would benefit a lot, but not as much as Drew Holiday, who had an insane assist number. I think actually it's his highest assists on the year. Didn't double check that before the show, so don't quote me on it, but it's a crazy performance by him in that game. Middleton also solid. Pat Connaughton doing some things off the bench. DiVincenzo getting use full minutes. Bobby Portis looking good. I just think right now, though, if Giannis is in, you can't go really back to any of those guys because their prices have taken a slight uptick because of them having that nice day and the chance that Giannis misses another game. But if Giannis is in, he's the only play. If he's out, I think you have to prioritize Holiday and Middleton again, probably a little more Bobby Portis still. And then Pat Connaughton, I think, would be the one I'm probably reluctant to chase, even though I can't really knock the projection for him. He's actually been a much more fantasy viable play recently than it seems like he would have been years ago.
I think Rinpak said yesterday that he was assuming that Giannis is going to be out. So I'm kind of going that direction. That Giannis is going to be in. My apologies. I'm pretty sure that you're going to see Giannis getting in, and you're not going to have to worry about any of this situation. But otherwise, Chris Middleton is kind of the guy that you would be going to right away, especially because it got the verified dog bark from your end. I think that's always I
didn't know if that came through. But
is it time for good dog, bad dog already?
Yeah, I really like that direction for it. So Chris Middleton, all in. Not that that would be something that I would be against anyway, but it got the 100% dog approval. So that's what we're really here for.
All right, LaMelo Ball remains out for the Hornets, possibly for the season, a situation that resulted in a highly owned and mostly disappointing Devontae Graham last game. Eric, do you want to go back to him or any other Charlotte players tonight versus Houston?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay.
For sure. On FanDuel, Malik Monk, 3,800. On DraftKings, probably. So again, this is another tale of two sites kind of a situation, I think, for me. These guys are going to project and look a lot better on FanDuel. You're rostering 9 guys. Malik Monk, Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington. I like all of these guys in this spot. They're all a little bit too low. FanDuel's a little bit slower on the draw most of the time. They have been better of late. There's a couple of times that they've been pricing guys up. Like yesterday, they got to Jordan Poole a little bit more than DraftKings did. I wish they'd gone even further so that I didn't roster as much of him, but such is life. Terry Rozier, really kind of the guy that I'm looking to be being invested in heavily today. 39 minutes, 26% usage that first time out here against the Spurs in the absence of LaMelo Ball. Gordon Hayward, 7K at the small forward position. We saw the kind of upside that exists there as he, almost tried to trump. If it hadn't been for OT, would have beaten both Brown and Middleton at that small forward position for less on the day when they were both super chalks. So I like going back that direction. 31.4% usage in that game. Yeah, give me a lot of Charlotte.
I think Charlotte's intriguing too. I'm willing to go back to Devontae Graham. I don't know if I'll be as heavy because of the size of the slate and the fact that, being burned last time wasn't the best, but did get just around 28 minutes in that spot. And I think there's room for him. I think what Eric mentioned though is really my main concern for these guys is that you do have Malik Monk in there. You do have Terry Rozier. Those are both guys who can be ball dominant. You have Gordon Hayward, who's going to get his shot up and can also assist a little bit higher than he has been, though the rate data for him doesn't get that much better with LaMelo off the floor. But I think Devontae Graham just getting that much minutes to me gives me some sign of hope. And maybe if Hayward ends up a little bit higher owned, you get a bit of leverage by going to a guy like Devontae Graham. So I'll be there if there's a better value play that pops up because of all the trade machinations going on there. And the fact that the NBA all year long has had late rule outs that open up some value. I think that's something that could change the situation. But right now, I think Devontae Graham looks like one of the better semi-value plays out there to me. And I'm willing to take the stab just in the hopes that he can show a little more upside than he did last game where he was on the court, but just didn't do everything.
Semi-value play. I love that. We're going to brand that.
Value adjacent.
He's my value adjacent play of the day. Here you go.
New segment. Malcolm Brogdon is questionable after he missed last game for Indiana, resulting in more run for TJ McConnell and more playmaking for Karis LeVert. Spags, if he's out again, does anyone on Indiana look like a must-have versus Detroit?
I would think that Karis LeVert isn't a must-have, but he's a guy that I'm really intrigued by because he did get to do some more playmaking in that spot. It actually, I think, meaningfully hurt TJ McConnell, who still saw over 30 minutes, but didn't have quite the upside, didn't get to the 40 minutes that he's gotten previously when Malcolm Brogdon was out. But I really think, if Brogdon's out, there has to be more production going to, especially to LeVert, but going to Sabonis too. Sabonis last game benefited from Turner not being available. If Turner's out again, I think we didn't put that on the injury news here, but he's questionable too. If those guys both end up out, I think you can sort of look to really anybody in Indiana and feel pretty decent about it. Really, LeVert, there's a ceiling game in LeVert somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be quite as high as when he was basically doing everything in Brooklyn. I don't know if he has a 70 fantasy point upside when you're playing alongside Sabonis, who does a little bit of everything, rebounds well, assists well, and gets his shots up. But I think there is room for these guys to have a nice day today. So I think if you do get Brogdon out, if you do get, I think real Brogdon, if Turner's out too, it's fine. But Brogdon is a key one there. If he's out, I think you have to get some LeVert, especially I think on FanDuel where the pricing and positionality makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I probably agree with you there. God, why did they start Edmund Sumner? Like, what are they trying to do to us? Like, give me TJ McConnell and give me the opportunity to actually roster the guy and be on him on a good game. He was still garnering some ownership there. I didn't mind going that direction. He's still down on FanDuel 5K. And we know the kind of upside that he can have in certain spots if he gets 48 steals. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure I like going that direction again, even if he's not in the starting lineup, if Brogdon were to sit. If Brogdon's in, 6,900 is a really nice price tag over on FanDuel for him. It's hard for me to get to anybody except for maybe a share or two of Miles Turner because he's 5,600 over on DraftKings. But FanDuel, those guys are just such better, what's the correct way to say it? Such better priced. That's awful. More advantageously priced. There we are. Justin Holiday, 3,900 as well. Put him into the sorting hat of all the small forwards that you can play over there and punt with too.
Serge Ibaka will be out at least 2 more games, and Ivica seems like he'll be a popular play again tonight. Eric, are you going his way versus the Spurs?
Okay, so this is going to be slanderous because I love Zubac, and I've been defending him multiple times, and we saw the kind of mid-30s minutes upside that he had. Last game out, you had Clint Capella getting in the closing lineup. Zubac did not play well. He had probably his worst game that I've ever seen him play in this last matchup against the Hawks. He went -18. I try not to look at plus minus too much, but at -18 when everybody else on the team is either positive outside of, Reggie Jackson, who was a -11, everybody else was a pretty good performer on that day. They ended up resting Zubac from all the way. He played the first 6 minutes of the third quarter. He didn't see the floor again the rest of the way in. They decided to close. Luke Kennard was playing fantastic. They ended up adding him into the rotation halfway through the third quarter. Do I expect him to go back that direction the same way they did there? No, but they were getting pounded, and they came back and won an unexpected game, a game that they had no business winning the other night. I don't know. I know that this sets up as a matchup against Podol. You see 2 big lumbering dudes going up against each other. It seems like it would be a great matchup. But what I really don't like is that Greg Eubanks played like 1.5 minutes for the Spurs. There's no need to bring him out to keep Zubac on the court if they're not going to play Greg Eubanks in that rotation and it becomes Rudy Gay. That's my major minutes concern with Zubac. If he's not putting his foot down early on Podol, there's an opportunity for him to get under 30 minutes. He's getting crazy amount of ownership. So I have some pushback on a day where I'm generally always riding Zubac. I'm off today.
So I'm excited because Eric called somebody Greg for once and it was the wrong name. Drew Eubanks would be the guy, but we all have Greg on the line when we're doing shows. And I get it, but
Drew Eubanks, played a minute and a half last game.
So I think to me that's and there's no shame here in getting Drew Eubanks' name wrong. I thought it was funny that Eric called somebody Greg after a torrid history of everybody calling him Greg.
Greg number 2.
I think with Pirtle, it's me and Eric made the point in there, and I think was still sort of dug his heels on moving away. But I think in that spot against Atlanta, you're talking about a matchup versus Clint Capella, where I don't think Zubac was playing fine in the first half, playing fantasy-wise was playing fine. As Eric mentioned, the plus minus is pretty bad. But in that spot against Capella, Zubac can't do what Capella does, and he couldn't keep up with what Capella was doing. So they went 5 wide there, having guys spread the floor, having guys try to beat Capella, where you have another knockdown shooter in Kennard, at least a theoretical knockdown shooter, whether he's been that this year or not. It's up for debate. But I think in this spot against Pirtle, you're probably going to see him play every minute that Pirtle's out there, and Pirtle hasn't been lacking for run. You also aren't going to have the Rudy Gay pivot in there. Rudy Gay is out for the Spurs side, so you're not going to see him playing the 5. Maybe that does mean more Eubanks minutes. Maybe that means that we see Zubac get closer to 35 minutes instead of 30. I think it does bode well. The thing that I have concern for is that Zubac is going to be so chalky on FanDuel and DraftKings. It's going to be a very highly owned play on a slate where you have guys like Cat, where you have guys like Nikola Jokic, you have Vucevic too. You have a lot of good center plays. That to me scares me more. But I think in this spot, I feel like Zubac is pretty safe. I think he's definitely the cash game center for today, but I just don't know that he'll have the ceiling to compete with those guys. And that said, I still imagine he'll have a lot of Zubac because he looks like one of the top projected plays at center today, really, no matter what site you're looking at.
The Magic have Terrence Ross and Chase Randall questionable after they were late absences last night. Spags, do you have any interest in Orlando's players if they're out again tonight versus Phoenix?
I mentioned earlier in the show my struggles with Michael Carter-Williams, who got there minutes-wise, 32 minutes, but ended up with about a 19 fantasy point day on FanDuel, a little bit worse on DraftKings with the lack of a steals bonus on there. But I think I wouldn't mind going back to Michael Carter-Williams, probably not as heavy as I accidentally got to yesterday, but I think still a guy seeing minutes there. You do need a ball handler. Theoretically, you need somebody who can really do their best to guard Chris Paul and limit what he can do. And I think Carter-Williams could see at least the same minutes he saw yesterday, if not get a few more. But I think if those guys are in. Orlando, to me, yesterday looked really unappealing. And when you have two bodies out, guys who can take a lot of shots and also dominate at least minutes for Chase of Randall, I think with those guys being out of the mix again today, potentially, you probably have to take more flyers on Orlando, even though I think everybody who played a Magic player besides Evan Fournier yesterday was probably wildly disappointed. You got to go back there just because lack of bodies creates opportunity. And I think that could be the case for the Magic if you get no Ross and no Randall today.
My question is, are you going to go back to the Aaron Gordon well? That's really what the question is. Like, what's the comfort level? Had he played well yesterday, he would have been immense chalk again. I guess on DraftKings, it's not really a question. I don't want to play him at 7K either way. But on FanDuel, do you have any interest in going back to Aaron Gordon?
I think you can make the case. And I think one thing that jumped out to me with the matchup versus Denver is that the way you beat Denver, I mentioned this on I think on our show yesterday, the way you beat Denver is assisting at a high level. They give up more assisted twos than assisted threes than league average by a pretty wide margin. And I think that was sort of where Aaron Gordon stalled out, was he just isn't a great shot creator, even though he's playing the backup point guard when you don't have Randall, when you don't have Ross. But he was getting possessions. He played good minutes. He was out there. He just sucked. And I think sometimes it's going to happen. Guys are going to suck. And I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with his trade requests or demands or whatever the case may be. I think you have to go back there, but it really depends to me though on having Ross and having Randall out, because I think if those guys get in, you're sort of forcing a narrative, forcing a projection that isn't fully there. And I think that to me gives me some concern.
Marvin Bagley's injury for the Kings hasn't been the busiest one in the NBA DFS, but there have been major ramifications for Sacramento with all 5 starters playing over 35 minutes last game. Eric, does anyone jump out for the Kings tonight versus Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, we're got to go back to Fox. I mean, Fox is just being a beast at the moment. Him and Tyrese Halliburton, both guys, and I'm going to be getting to quite a bit. We're seeing a gigantic total on this, sitting around 231. I like Tyrese Halliburton in general. Now that he's been inserted, he's been in the starting lineup for different spots, getting those minutes back up to 36 last time out, 28 real points. If he had put any other counting stats into the box score in that spot, you would have been looking at a super, I mean, he's already very popular, but a guy that I do like again in this spot. De'Aaron Fox, just kind of at the point guard position over on FanDuel. When you're looking up at Doncic and you're looking up at some of these other top tier plays, he kind of sticks out as the next guy that you really want to be going to. Projects out well with Alex. You can't find 37 minutes in that level of production at many other spots that is under 9K. Like 8,900 is almost kind of a misprice for the level of usage. A 32.5 usage last time out, 23 shot attempts. Just in a pure volume sense, De'Aaron Fox just jumps off the page. Sure, there's also some trade interest in a lot of these pieces, be it Buddy Hield, Rashawn Holmes, and Harrison Barnes specifically is somebody that I don't know if he'll be around at the end of the day. But I am pretty sure every single one of them is in play for this slate.
Yeah, I think all the Kings get a little more appealing without Bagley. And as Eric was talking about there, and I think Rashawn Holmes, we've seen him have these ceiling days recently in games without having Bagley in there, which I think is no coincidence. We do see a 5% jump in usage for Holmes and court time without Bagley. Also a little bit more rebounding. I think all those things do make sense. Buddy Hield's always a guy that I talk about on the show, and I get more of him than the field pretty much every day. And I don't mind that because he's playing such a high level of minutes every day that he can certainly shoot himself into a ceiling day. And at least I think has been competent enough, picking up just enough rebounds, just enough assists every game that he's not going to be part of your lineup that kills you for the most part. The guy today, though, where I had a ton of him the other day, it worked fantastically, but Tyrese Halliburton, I'm scared of because he shot 11 for 15 to have what I think is just a competent fantasy day last time out. He assists less, he rebounds less. He, I think, has been stealing less. So that's a volatile stat that you can't really point to with any sort of confidence really, but he does everything a bit less playing alongside De'Aaron Fox. And I don't know that that's great. And if Halliburton's going to be chalk today, like, yeah, he benefits in minutes. He played, as Eric mentioned, the most minutes he's played since he had his injuries and was minutes restricted before. He's played, a lot lately. So I think he can still get there, but at 11 for 15 shooting day for a guy who doesn't like shooting a lot, I think is really unsustainable. So I think trying to get under Halliburton and maybe for me, adjusting his rates down a little bit more, just so I don't get there too heavy, it's going to be a priority for me because I think people see that last game and not dig deeper and go, oh yeah, he's probably not going to shoot 80% from the floor, 90% from the floor again, because this is not how games work. And I think Halliburton's probably due for a come down game, but one maybe you get still a good amount of because he's hard to avoid on a projection basis.
Yeah, and I'll also say that he only had 1 rebound, 2 assists. Like, you're looking at a spot too where I would expect the counting stats in 36 minutes to go up much more than that. He's not a great rebounder. A guy that's probably is one thing that is a knock on him. There's like basically zero double upside over on DraftKings or anything. But I would expect him to run into more assists. Just a guy who likes to have the ball in his hand, creates, does a lot of things for this team. De'Aaron Fox can play off the ball a little bit. I just expect him to be better than that in the other counting stats that makes up for that great shooting outing.
Okay, we don't have time for a lot of chit chat today because we are 45 minutes and have to go quick. But Eric, really fast, someone asked if you were going to pull out a guitar and play something for us. I'm assuming by your look today. I don't know. Do you play guitar?
I do play guitar. That's a very strange thing.
Oh.
Please, maybe it's one of my friends. I do not have YouTube chat pulled up here today. I'm just trying to stay functional. I got up this morning, did a golf on the Punta Cana, the PGA Tour event that's going on in the Dominican Republic tomorrow. So we had match play that I had to wake up and tweak some of my lineups for the WGC event for golf. So a lot of golf stuff. But yes, I have a piano, guitar. I like the music stuff. I'm a wholesome individual. I try.
I have to say for Eric, I don't see him being like the college douchebag guitarist, which I've been historically. I learned to play college and guitar, took classes, did that whole thing, learned to play Wonderwall really well. But I see Eric playing guitar for children and doing like folk sing-alongs. And I don't know why that's why you have the guitar. It's not for anything creepy, not for anything like, oh, it's just trying to get attention. Just that you play it for kids and make them feel good about themselves doing covers of Raffi songs.
Yeah, I'm a wholesome individual. You got me. No, I was absolutely the guitar guy. I in college I was kind of that douche a little bit. I had to learn to do it a little bit then. I got a guitar, my first one, when I was like 19, 20 years old, and just like really got hooked on it, and then it spurred into piano and all these other things. But yeah, good times.
Something to tease for a 1 hour show where we have to fill some time.
Guys, I have a guitar too and play also.
Oh, good.
I'm being serious.
Gosh. That's fantastic.
It's like Blue Hat Day times 10. We can all play guitars at varying degrees of quality.
My parents got it for me after a breakup instead of a dog. They were like, here, this won't pee on your carpet.
It's honestly incredible.
Yeah. All I can play is Taylor Swift though. So unless
you
guys learn. No.
Okay.
Not in front of people.
Are we taking the show on the road?
I can do a good Louis Armstrong impression, which I don't know if that's okay in 2021. I see skies blue.
Oh my gosh.
White. Yeah, it's not it. Give me a 50s R&B man and I can give you an impression.
Wow. We have so many hidden talents on this show.
Just go again. One more time.
It's like you think the person's a real people. No, yeah. I'm not. No, okay. I'm not your show pony, Eric. By the way, this chat made me laugh from Jordan Burkhardt. Fun fact, Eric got his start with the Wiggles. I could see you being a Wiggles type, Eric.
Don't know what that is, but I don't like the name. Oh man, don't pull it up, Jordan.
You clearly haven't watched Children at all. I nannied for a long time and I can see that. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
My nieces and nephews, it's Paw Patrol. That's their life.
The Wiggles. Okay, let's get back on track. Heading over to our one-on-one segment. In these battles between stars, which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? We're going to start off with Luka Doncic is one of the top pay-up options on the slate versus Minnesota's iffy defense. Karl Anthony Towns won't have anyone to defend him on Dallas' side either. So which superstar do you want more in this one-on-one, Luka or Cat Spags?
I think for me, it's going to be Luka, but I do think that if you are trying to get away from the center chalks we talked about with Zubac, I think that going to a guy like Cat, to me, is one of the better projected center plays. Jokic, still the top play in the slate, as he's going to be pretty much every night at center. But Luka in the spot, just going against a Minnesota defense that's definitely worse with no Malik Beasley out there that really shows nothing all year long, about as bad as the vaunted Sacramento's and Washington's out there. They just play a little bit less fast. I think in this spot, Luka has a really nice ceiling to himself. I think, too, if there's some way for you to get to a Luka and Cat lineup, I think that's one that's not going to be incredibly highly owned on this slate. Just a big enough slate where people won't be forcing studs and people will still probably be trying to get to James Harden a good amount. So I think Luka's a really good play. Both guys are really good plays, but Luka, to me, a cut above unless you are trying to play game theory and just get away from center chalk.
Yeah, right there with you. Luka would be the priority for me, but obviously he comes with higher ownership in that matchup. I'm curious. Again, we'll see with this James Harden deal. The one caveat to the whole thing is that game locks at 8 p.m., whereas the Utah and Brooklyn game locks at 10. So if we don't have the James Harden news before then, I would expect that Luka ownership to go up even a little bit more. Not that I'm saying people are going to be abandoning James Harden, but James Harden was only 33.6% owned in the $3 yesterday on FanDuel. So people were obviously apprehensive about the situation. This one sticks out as an even bigger sit risk, if you will, because it is against Utah. It's a game that they're not already projected to win. It doesn't have Kyrie or Durant. So maybe just punt the game entirely and have a bunch of value to plug in from there. But back to the Cat and Doncic situation, playing both of them is definitely a great way to go. We're going to have value. There's 22 teams playing in action today. I find it hard to believe that we're not going to have a ton of news that opens up value, makes it very Stars and Scrub-esque. I see that he's getting under 3% ownership on DraftKings right now for Cat. I expect that number to come up as well as more value emerges.
I'm still laughing about the Wiggles comment. I can't. Okay.
I don't know if I'm offended or not yet. We're going to find out after the show. When I Google Wiggles, there it comes.
De'Aaron Fox has been priced up for a while now with his star turn in Sacramento. Trae Young will be a go tonight against him in a matchup against Sacramento's hideous defense. Eric, who looks better in this one-on-one, Fox or Trae?
I'm going to go to the Fox side of it again. Trae Young, for some reason, just hasn't been as fire of late, so to speak, not to be riding the wave, but he had a better outing against the Clippers. Oklahoma City just played abysmally there. I'm kind of looking down through the box scores. Like Trae Young's been all right, but like I don't want to go crazy box score dinging. It's just more so that De'Aaron Fox gets the other side of that. He gets all of the usage. John Collins, Capella exists to maybe take away a little bit there. But I really like going to De'Aaron Fox. He's just kind of a primary spend up for me. The security that you get with him, the built-in floor with him as well. He just feels more secure day in, day out. So give me that side of it on an either or.
I like Fox, and I think too the fact he's going to be a bit less owned definitely seems appealing. But Trae Young's DraftKings price I think is just a little bit too low now. 8,700 for him, and we know the ceiling's there. You know the ceiling should be there even more in the spot against Sacramento, who we talk about it all the time. They play fast, they played poor defensively. Those are really the key things you want if you are going to play any guy and try to capture a ceiling day for a dude like Trae Young, who, as Eric mentioned, has been down a lot recently. As you have Gallo in the mix, you have Bogdan Bogdanovic in the mix. You have to also account for the fact that maybe Bogdan puts up a few more shots today going against his former team. That's definitely, revenge narrative is never the best thing, but a guy like Bogdan who does get his own possessions to either shoot or create, it could be more shots going up there. But I still think from a ceiling perspective, it's a 117 implied total for Atlanta. I think that Trae can have the outlier day. And I do think that, even though I expect Tyrese Halliburton to take a step backwards in terms of usage, I do think the ceiling's a bit higher for Fox or for Trae today instead of Fox. Both guys are perfectly solid plays, but I think Young being now cheaper than Fox when most of the year he was at least $1,000 more, I'd say. I think there's a bit of a price sensitivity thing for me on DraftKings, at least, where I think getting to Trae Young seems like the good move today, even though I really can't question going to either guy.
And last but not least, we've got Giannis Valanciunas has been a rebound monster for years and could feast against OKC's poor shooting. Al Horford on the other side stands to gain more usage from the Thunder with SGA out. Spags, who would you want in this one-on-one of Sinners, J-Val or Big Al?
I would go Big Al's way, and I think that was a fun way of phrasing it, now that I heard Kayla say it out loud. But I like Al Horford in this situation, ruling out all the trade stuff we talked about earlier, ruling out the fact that Horford maybe could see slightly less run. If he gets to 25 minutes, you are probably screwed instead of the 27 or 28 he'll be projected for. But I think there's a lot of opportunity with SGA out, and a lot of the offense is probably going to run through Al Horford more. He's had higher assist rates. He's had upwards of 30% usage in some spots without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year. So I think you have to take Al Horford, but Jonas, I think certainly another guy too. All these guys really in the 1-1 for the most part are going to be in play. But I think on a projection basis, and the opportunity basis, Horford's cheaper. There's more room there. If Jonas has a ceiling day, then pretend I said the other thing. But I think you have to go Al Horford just on its face.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Just taking the price discount. Let's also just say that Spags was appreciating his own work there. He was basically He was basically like, I am an incredible
I was
writer.
Appreciating seeing it go through the vessel that is Kayla as our host. It's really about the creative process. You never know how it's going to come out
of my mouth. So
yeah. Tortured artist.
You know how it was being creative back when you were in the Wiggles, Eric. So I hope you can understand my enthusiasm.
Good God. I don't even know. Oh man. I'm going to take the discount off of it. J-Val is fine. If you told me that he was going to play 34 minutes again, like we saw against Boston in that game, but that went to overtime, I'm assuming he's still going to get capped at like 28, 29 minutes. There's not really a lot of upside to go above that now that all those other pieces are healthy that can play and slot in at a smaller 5 spot. But, I don't expect 12.1% usage this time out either. So if J-Val were to be on the court, get some extended run, there's an upside that exists there against Al Horford and Moses Brown. But yeah, Horford for the discount. And on this slate specifically, where I don't want to be like having to reach for my payups, I'd rather go all the way up top. And then Horford at that mid-range kind of gives you a little bit of savings to jam pack a lineup a little bit better than J-Val, who would kind of need a real outlier game in order to get there on this slate.
I think the Wiggles are even mentioned in Life as We Know It, the movie with Katherine Heigl and Josh Duhamel, where he's like, if I knew where they lived, I'd go over there and what does he say? Something. We're going to stop talking about the Wiggles now.
For that. No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm fine.
You guys aren't familiar with that rom-com? Come on.
I know it exists.
Isn't that
yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know it exists. It's the one where doesn't he have like the friend, or she has the friend that passes away and they end up together or something?
Yes, see, I knew Eric would do this. Okay.
So welcome. I am a soft, sensitive individual. It's fine.
Friends, if you're not able to catch our Awesemo shows on YouTube, don't forget about the Awesemo Podcast Network. We've got a podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform. So head on over to awesemo.com/podcast to check out the latest. Just leave a 5-star review on one of our podcasts with your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One winner will be rewarded every Friday, and reviews will be eligible to win for up to 1 year. Best of luck. It is now time for our No House Advantage prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantage's props of the day for key players. So guys, do you like the over or under on them? We're going to start with Jamal Murray over under 20.5 points. Eric.
Definitely going to be a 50-50, because nothing better than Spags leading it off with a 50-50 proposition to make you take a stand. This is like a bottom 1% play that I would be making over at NHA, but I do like shading a little bit on the under. We've seen him play better of late. I know Alex, I think it's 0.05. I hope he doesn't mind the fact that I'm taking the under in this spot, but I think that there's certainly a place for Jamal Murray to go way, way over top of it. I just think 20.5 is kind of a built-in number based on a lot of the production here. PJ Dozier is getting in there. He's not a big usage guy, so maybe that helps out a little bit, but Will Barton's been coming on of late. Michael Porter Jr. There's just a lot of other mouths to feed as well. Jokic, we know the kind of usage and production that he's been putting up. Only 17 shot attempts last time, which has actually been on the low end for him of late, with 19 and 23 coming through. So I'll just take the under there in a spot where I don't have a huge lean one way or another. We've seen Toronto get completely blitzed of late, so I don't mind either way, but I'm going to shade on the under.
I think this is one of the more interesting props. As Eric mentioned, it's pretty much a straight 50-50 proposition, because Awesemo has the points projection for Jamal Murray at 20.51, and the line is at 20.5. But I will take the over here too. I do think 20.7 is my projection for Jamal Murray. It's still very close regardless, but I think Murray in this spot, I just like the matchup against Toronto, where you have Van Vliet and Lowry. You have a guy in Lowry who is still very much being hotly debated. I think the reports around him are that he's basically, this trade deadline is his free agency. He's going to decide if he wants to stay in Toronto or if he wants to go wherever, and Masai Ujiri is going to squeeze as much out of that process as he can. And I think in this spot, maybe there is a little bit of a distraction for Kyle Lowry. Maybe the defense isn't quite there. I think these are narrative things that don't matter that much, but main thing, Jamal Murray's projection is right there. I don't mind going to him. It's a 50-50 proposition, so you're probably making it a 1 or 2 pointer at best, a no house advantage, but I would slightly shade the over there, even though I think Eric's case for the under is just as valid.
Spags, right back to you for Sabonis over under 24.5 points and assists.
So this is one right now that I think doesn't look that great, but we talk a lot about the news of no house advantage and how that process can work, and how if you do get a Brogdon out, if you do get a Miles Turner out, that won't help out the rebound numbers for Sabonis on this particular prop. But I do think that's something that with points and assists, if Brogdon is out, you're going to see a lot more shots for Sabonis. You're going to see a lot more assist opportunity, even with LeVert and McConnell in the mix. So I think right now I would cautiously shade over. I still have him hitting the over by a pretty narrow margin here. But I think that if you get Brogdon out, I think he's a smash play on the over. So that's something to keep an eye out for, and one that right now looks like a 50-50 proposition, one that could be closer to 66-33 or 75-25 by the time the slate locks.
Yeah, it's kind of the theme of the day, is being able to react to news. I think there's going to be a ton. We have just over 2 hours before lock. I would be very shocked if we didn't see something surprising happen either right before it or well into lock as well. There's going to be some unexpected things that happen when this is kind of the nature of 2021 NBA basketball already. Now you get 22 teams into the mix before a trade deadline. All of those factors together. It's been awfully quiet here this morning, so maybe I'm overplaying that a little bit, but I see some things happening here. Brogdon and Turner, I don't think that there are two guys who are possibly going to be getting moved ahead of time, but for sure reacting to if they're sitting out, making sure that you get on top of Sabonis, and otherwise, if they're both in, getting below him.
Eric, right back to you for Luka, over under 39.5 points and assists.
So I'm going to shade just a tiny bit on the under, and I say that fully well knowing that he's going to be more than likely one of my highest owned players in DFS. It's just a gigantic number for him there. He could get 29 and 10 and still be hitting on the under in a combination of that. You're basically playing him on DraftKings, triple-double upside every time he touches the floor. No problem getting to his production everywhere there, but I think Alex shades a little bit towards the under. I'm going to kind of go that direction as well. Minnesota, obviously a fantastic matchup here. Zinger still in the mix, but really has no effect on Luka. I love him from a fantasy basketball profile today, but it's just a numbers game, and I'm going to take a tiny bit on the under.
I think the median projection, I'm on the same page there. The median projection for me, I have him at 38.5 points and assists. And I think that would certainly normally make me go under, but in this spot where you have Dallas having the highest implied total on the slate at 119.8, you have a matchup against Minnesota where the game itself, 231.5 combined total. This to me does kind of scream Luka ceiling spot potentially. And I think that's one thing that the ownership's going to be there on him. And I think I will personally want to be at least with the field on Luka just out of that fear/concern that this could be the spot that he gets there in a major way. I think all the signs are blowing there. And I think that's one spot where you kind of have to eyeball test your median projection and maybe, be willing to play a little bit more of a guy, even though they're not willing or they're not grading out that well in no house advantage. So I would take the over there, but I think right now it does still look like a 50-50 proposition when you're not accounting for some of the other variables of the matchup and the Vegas total.
And the prop with the best odds on the board currently, according to Awesemo, is Colin Sexton under 13.5 three-pointers, a misprice on no house advantage that has a 100% chance of hitting the under. Spags, is this your top 10 play tonight on NHA?
Yeah, I think that's on no house advantage. If you're not familiar with the format on there, as Kayla just mentioned, you're giving a 10-pointer to some of your top bets, giving a 1-pointer or, anything in between, obviously, to your lower confidence bets. But I can say safely, there's no way that Colin Sexton will hit the league record in NBA three-pointers today, and maybe no house advantage corrects that. They usually don't. That's sort of the appeal of no house advantage. It's like being mispriced on a DFS site. So that's one, make sure, keep your eye peeled there, make sure that doesn't change somehow. I don't think it will, but right now that has to be the one that you put in as a 10-pointer because there's literally no chance. I swear, if he hits 14 3-pointers today, I will come back here and not even acknowledge it ever again, but it has to be the play you take today.
I will quit sports betting. I will be done. I will find a new line of work of employment. 14 is the league record by Klay Thompson. Colin Sexton is not Klay Thompson. I don't think he's going to attempt 14 3-pointers, let alone make them. This is just a guaranteed stone cold lock. Mail it in, taking the under on 10 or on your 10-point slot.
All right. Since we are short on time, I'm going to make the executive decision to fly by DFS hedge. We're going to go straight to good dog, bad dog.
See, we caught him off guard. We caught him off guard. That was all you. Honestly, that's on you.
If you got to give him the heads up now.
I know.
If I'm on the Wiggles, can I do a little bark? Is that like what I would do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
All right, Eric, who is your good dog tonight?
My good dog is going to be, oh man. Well, we just jumped segments. I'm
so sorry.
Equally as unprepared. No, you're fine. I'm going to go good dog. Let's go 6.5 for Boston here. That line is moved completely to the fact that that I'm pretty sure that Giannis is going to play. I'll just kind of wait and react to that news. Again, a lot of my betting of late has been revolved around taking advantage of the news as it comes out. Same thing with James Harden. If he were to be out, I would want to be right on top of the Utah number, whatever that ends up being. So no matter what, I'm going the direction of reacting to the news and taking that 1-minute window and just having it queued up. Yesterday, it worked out fantastically well. I had the money line of Brooklyn. I just had it sitting there. And as soon as he got ruled in, I hit enter and it took my bet. So that's one way that you can do it.
Yeah, I think and we've been pretty good on our good dog, bad dog picks recently, so I'll try to keep it going here with the good dog. And I think Houston to me jumps out as being a good dog here against a Charlotte team that one of the things that I've talked about a lot here, teams have a higher upside normally when you have shot creators and you're going against a team that gives up a lot of assisted 2s and 3s. That is the case for Charlotte, who gives up a good amount more. My microphone's blocking it, 10% more on 2s, 7.5% actually on 3s. So I think this is where you could see the Rockets finally piece something together here. Obviously, if Oladipo's out or something because of trade issues that could throw a wrench in things. But I think in this situation for Houston, this is kind of the matchup a team like Houston's built for, where you have guys who can create shots. And I think in this spot, they'd be the good dog.
All right. I don't know that we have time for Bad Dog. Really, really quickly, what are your fade of the days, fellas? Or make or break. Pick one, whichever one you want to let people know.
You can take fade of the day because I feel like you got to get your Zubac takeout one more time.
Yeah, God, I got to say it. Yeah, Zubac, I'm going to be under the field on for maybe the first time in my entire life, and it does not feel great, and I feel like I have to apologize to my Lord Zubac.
For me, it's Kyle Anderson. I don't get why he's as owned as he is as a play today. I think there's not a lot of great value, so people go into the mid-range. I just don't think the opportunity is quite as big for him as people seem to. I think box score chasing has really been the main thing with Kyle Anderson. Maybe he does it again, but I just don't see it happening. So he'd be my fade of the day.
There we go. Guys, thank you so much. Sorry we were pressed on time today. Thanks to Eric and Spags. As always, thanks to you for watching out there. I'm Kayla Knierim. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock are up next. We will see you guys tomorrow.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
All right, later, guys.
Gosh, I'm still dying. Bye, guys.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft. I'm Dave Loughran on Twitter, Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. Give me a follow along with my man Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. What's good, brother?
Not much. Back to buying Top Shots. It's been a fun day.
Yeah. That's either going to be the best decision of your life, or you're going to look back on it a week and you're going to be spending the whole day listing them.
Yeah, I mean, it may not go well, but I've been pretty happy with what I bought.
Yeah, why not? Man, hey, you got to take some shots here and there. And you still got the deep dive out, though, right? That's what matters.
Yeah, got the deep dive out. And yeah, I mean, anytime you can spend $9,000 on a YouTube highlight, you have to feel pretty good about it.
That's great. Yeah, I'm happy for you, I guess. Anyway, we're happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up. More importantly, subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton. The more people that subscribe to the channel, the more people that hit the thumbs up, that comment, that even engage in the YouTube in the YouTube chat, helps us expand our reach, continue to put out great free content for all of you to take in every single day. So thumbs up, subscribe. Let's get started. First question is always 11 game slate. Looks a whole lot more different than yesterday. And you know, there's a couple spots, right? You have SGA, who got ruled out in the afternoon. That was huge news. Before that, though, we didn't have a whole lot of pending news, and that was kind of out of the blue. You've got Malcolm Brogdon and Miles Turner questionable, but there's not a whole lot going on for an 11-game slate.
I mean, James Harden and Giannis Antetokounmpo are also questionable. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I assumed Giannis would. Sorry, I assumed Giannis would play because he practiced yesterday.
yeah, I'm assuming he will too, but like that obviously can change a ton. Harden played yesterday, but who knows? And then Brogdon and Turner, like you said. So obviously waiting on potentially big news there, but it's kind of a weird slate too because for 11 games, there's not a whole lot of plays, I guess. Like, I mean, there's obviously a lot of guys that you can like play in tournaments, but as far as like guys that stand out at their salaries, it felt like a lot smaller slate when I wrote the deep dive. I think part of that is because DraftKings has the $2,500 Millie Maker tonight, so they seem to actually like take their pricing seriously, and a lot of guys don't look that good. But overall, it was just kind of like there's a lot of like slower teams or better defensive teams playing, and some games that don't leave a whole lot for DFS. So it feels like a smaller slate than 11 games.
It does. I almost was going to say, let's just go the hour, but knowing you and me, it'll end up being far longer than the hour. So we got about an hour and 10 minutes to make this work. Let's kick it off with the Pistons and the Indiana Pacers. Pistons coming into this one as 6-point dogs, 218.5 total. There's no real significant injury news here. It's a team that's dealt with a lot of them over the past month, but they appear to be getting mostly healthy outside of guys like Diallo and Ellington and Magruder being out the previous two. Well, Ellington being questionable. But on an ownership standpoint, and you can check that out at Awesemo.com. If you hear us reference ownership in the boom or bust tool, all of that great stuff is at Awesemo.com/join if you want to follow along with us. Are there any spots here against the Pacers that might stand out to you as key plays on such a big slate?
No, I mean, there's guys that look okay in tournaments like Jeremy Grant, clearly hasn't been playing as well recently as he did early in the season, but he's still playing big minutes. The Pacers have been a pretty decent matchup recently, 21st in defensive rating over the last month, 10th in pace. So, I mean, you can make a case for Grant. You can always make a case for Plumlee in tournaments because he produces at a high rate, but the minutes are obviously not really where you'd want them to be. Isaiah Stewart getting more run recently, but center has some value on this slate that looks really good. So it kind of pushes Stewart back to being like a secondary option as well. Same can be said for Josh Jackson. There's nothing here that stands out as someone that I think is a great play. There's several guys on the Pistons where, if you use them as a contrarian play in a tournament lineup, they're fine because they have a high ceiling, but nothing that stands out as something that I would be prioritizing on the slate.
Yeah. On the Pacers side, Monday, right before we started the show, we got the Brogdon and Turner questionable news. We hadn't had any of that throughout the day. But now both of them remaining questionable for this one. Malcolm Brogdon dealing with that ailing back, Turner dealing with the ankle. Do you have both of them in today would be the first question. And if you do, what are your thoughts on the Pacers?
Yeah, I have them both in for now. Fortunately, this is the first game on the slate, and it's actually the only 7:00 game. So you'll have some time to make adjustments, if we get that news close to lock. But, we did see this game. We saw what happens if they're both out last game against Milwaukee. You had Edmund Sumner join the starting lineup, but that was basically a spot start. You got a bunch of minutes for TJ McConnell, as you would expect. Domantas Sabonis started at center, as you would expect. He's more productive in that role. Obviously, he's good regardless. So I think Sabonis, like if Brogdon and Turner are both in, Sabonis is still a strong option here. I think like he's averaged 1.36 DraftKings points per minute in the 5 games he's played with Brogdon and LeVert since LeVert came back. Overall this season, he's produced in that same range as well. If Brogdon or Turner are out, they both benefit Sabonis because if Turner's out, you're getting more minutes at center for Sabonis, which are more productive minutes. If Brogdon's out, you're taking one of the highest usage guys and one of the highest assist percentage guys out of the lineup. That can translate to more production for Sabonis as well. If Brogdon's in, he's a secondary option in tournaments. I think Miles Turner, though, if he's in, he's 5,600 on DraftKings, which I think does stand out as a good salary. Like I said, there are a couple of really good value centers. Turner, if he's in, I think is one of them. You can see 30 plus minutes from him in a pretty good spot against Detroit. I think that's a little bit cheaper than he should be. And if Brogdon's out, Karis LeVert looks like a much better option because you would get more playmaking responsibilities for him. You also get a bump in usage if Brogdon's out for LeVert.
Yeah, the LeVert price point, are you okay with that? $6,600 on DraftKings and FanDuel, $6,800 shooting guard eligible there?
If Brogdon's out, I am, because I think you'll see enough. Like obviously TJ McConnell takes over a lot of the assists and playmaking when Brogdon's out, but I think you'll see enough kind of trickle over to Karis LeVert that it sort of solidifies his production a little bit. And then you also most likely get a bump in usage as well. So I feel better about LeVert if Brogdon's out for sure.
What are Sabonis's rates with Brogdon and Turner off the floor? I wasn't sure if you already had them pulled up at some point throughout your research today.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, they're better.
Yeah, I would assume they're better because, on one case, you've got someone like Domantas Sabonis that is so proficient in all three of the major categories. He's a great scorer, he's a great playmaker, and he's also a great rebounder. So you would assume that Miles Turner, while he's not exactly a very good rebounder, him being out would force Domantas Sabonis closer to the rim, and Brogdon being out would just make it a whole lot easier for Sabonis to make more opportunities or take advantage of more opportunities as a playmaker. So both of them being out, you would think would affect him pretty significantly, even maybe if the numbers haven't bared that out a ton this season.
Yeah, I mean, only 230 minutes without them this season. He's only averaged 1.24 DraftKings points per minute, 24% usage rate, 24% assist percentage, 15% rebounding percentage. But it's just one of those things where I don't think you necessarily see like a massive bump for him because he already does so much. But like you were saying, if Turner's out, you're getting those center minutes for Sabonis, which are good. And if Brogdon's out, you're just getting more of everything, really. So, I do think that his production would go up. It's just he's already such a highly productive player that it can only go up by so much.
Yeah, that's fair. What about the last one here? I just want to cover all of our bases. We will have news. This is the 7 p.m. game. So that's the good thing. If Brogdon and Turner end up being out, one or the other, or in, we'll have that news. But what about TJ McConnell in the event that Malcolm Brogdon sits? Because this guy, he's a +1 per minute player on the season. And I mentioned to Josh on this morning's strategy show, he played 32 minutes last game in that 27-point blowout loss to Milwaukee. It looked like he was going to close that and play upwards of 37 minutes off the bench because Edmund Sumner was the one that started that game. That is a crazy amount of minutes for TJ McConnell, even if you were to get close to that in a close game if Brogdon was out.
Yeah, I mean, he played 20 minutes in the first half. The rotation in the second half was kind of weird because like he subbed out in the fourth quarter and it was a blowout, like you said, but you had Karis LeVert and Justin Holiday and Sabonis come back in when McConnell subbed out. So my guess is that he was going to go to the bench for 2 minutes and come back, but then never came back. I think you most likely get like 34 minutes from him if he comes off the bench. But remember, he started 2 games without Brogdon this year and he played 42 and 46 minutes. So they've given him a ton of playing time in the past when Brogdon's been out. So even if he comes off the bench, I think you're getting mid-30s from him. He is expensive enough. I mean, he's 5,900 on DraftKings. I don't think, assuming he comes off the bench, I don't think he ends up being like a lock, for lack of a better word. Like I think that he's underpriced, but he's not like a glaring value. But obviously if Brogdon's out, he does look like a good play.
So who do you think would have closed then?
No, I think McConnell would have closed. I think he was going to the bench and then coming back.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Especially based on Sumner's rotation there as well. Anything else for the Pacers?
Jeremy Lamb played like 28 minutes. He's 4,200 on DraftKings now. He's someone who, he doesn't score at a really high rate, but he gets enough usage and rebounds well enough that if he does get another 26 to 28 minutes, if Brogdon and Turner are out, he's a reasonable value.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Denver and Toronto then. My disdain towards Toronto recently is just, I don't even want to get into it because we don't have enough time. And everybody already knows how I feel about that anyway. But it's unrivaled at this point. Denver, 2.5-point favorites, 223 total. Monte Morris sidelined for Denver. No other real big news there. And then if we're looking just at ownership here, pulling up DraftKings right now, you have Nikola Jokic around 15%. And where I want to start is actually PJ Dozier because he's pulling more ownership, and I think our last update was like a couple hours ago, so we should have something very soon, I'm assuming in the next couple of minutes. But do you think Dozier warrants that price point, or I'm sorry, that ownership at his price point?
What's his ownership at?
It's 15% right now on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, it's not nothing on FanDuel, but 15% on DraftKings. I'm not saying it's particularly high, but it's the highest of anyone on Denver.
Yeah, so Dozier is kind of interesting because there's not a lot of really good cheap value on this slate, and Dozier does produce at a decent rate when he's on the floor. The thing with Dozier is that his playing time is volatile, but at $3,400, that's actually something that's sort of appealing. So I think that like the floor is still really low. Like if you look at the minutes he's played, even with Harris out and Morris out, you've still got 22 minutes 2 games ago, 18 the game before that, 22 the game before that. But then he played 28 minutes against Orlando. And if you look at the rotation, the thing that stands out is that he closed over both of Paul Millsap and JaMychal Green. I think you could see that happen again here against a Toronto team that has been playing smaller lately. Like if Toronto goes, I'm trying to find their last game, but like, let's say Toronto goes with Lowry, Van Vliet, Powell, Anunoby, and Siakam to close this game. You could very easily see Denver use Michael Porter Jr. at the 4 and go with Van Vliet Murray, Barton, and Dozier 1 through 3. So I think there is a path for Dozier to get another like 26 to 28 minutes. I don't think it's guaranteed. I don't think that it's safe, but at 3,400, like even if he does play 20 to 22 minutes, there's still a decent chance that he gets, enough points to be a good point per dollar option.
So Nikola Jokic on the season, just absurd numbers, leading candidate to win the MVP, 30+% usage rate, leads the team. His assist rate of 38% also leads the team. His rebounding rate of 18.1% also leads the team. So it's no surprise that on a per minute basis, he's averaging 1.62 DraftKings points per minute. I know if Giannis plays, if Harden plays, there are a lot of good high-priced options on this slate. But Luka Doncic also facing Minnesota. Where does Jokic come into the conversation for you against Toronto, just given how absurdly good he's been all season long?
I think he's an interesting play in tournaments because if James Harden is in, then I think Harden and Luka pretty clearly look like better plays in terms of just, projection at that price point than Jokic does. And then you also factor in that there's several very good point per dollar plays at center that also have pretty high ceilings. And from like an optimal lineup standpoint, you're not going to get to Jokic that easily. But obviously Jokic is one of the few players on the slate that at least has the ability to outscore guys like Harden and Doncic. So as long as the ownership is relatively low, and right now on DraftKings, we have Jokic projected for 15% ownership, Harden at 31, Luka at 21. Like if it's that close, I think I would probably just go towards what I think is the better build and be, building around Harden and Doncic and paying down at center. But if that gap gets a little bit bigger, as we approach lock, I think that's where Jokic starts to become really useful in tournaments.
Any other thoughts on Denver?
Not really. Michael Porter Jr., Will Barton, both playing pretty big minutes, Jamal Murray as well. But this is definitely one of those teams that I was alluding to at the top of the show where there's, outside of Jokic and, to whatever extent Dozier, there's nothing that looks like a top play, but there is stuff that can be kind of useful as the last guy in. I guess Paul Millsap deserves a mention as well. Obviously he sucked yesterday, only played 17 or 18 minutes. And that's kind of what you get is, he played 30 minutes 2 games ago. He played 18 minutes yesterday. He's averaged 0.9 fantasy points per minute for the season. He's cheap and there's not a lot of really good value. So he's volatile, but he does look like a decent option as far as, projection goes. I wouldn't play him and Dozier together. I think it's very unlikely they both close.
Okay. Let's talk about Toronto then. You see what happened to Siakam with Nick Nurse?
No.
Apparently he got fined a bunch of money for cursing him out.
They've had their issues this year.
It's really not good at all. It's really not good. I mean, they're a team that was won the finals. Kawhi Leonard leaves. They should still be a good team. They're like 17-26 at this point, just got smoked by Houston. And you look at them, Siakam's a good player. Lowry's a good player. Van Vliet's a good player. Norman Powell's having the best season of his career. And OG Anunoby's not too bad either, but they just can't win games, even against bad teams. But yeah, he's getting disciplined after a verbal spat with Nick Nurse. According to The Athletic, that's their title. So today against Denver, can we go to any of these guys?
Discipline meaning fined, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because last time he was disciplined, he was ruled out after lock.
Oh yeah. Well, I thought I saw fined on something earlier.
Do you remember what I'm talking about earlier this year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So hopefully it's just a fine and we don't get him ruled out after lock, but it's not a particularly appealing matchup against Denver. When you look at the pricing, Siakam, if he plays full minutes, has upside at 7,300 on DraftKings.
$50,000, by the way. So yeah, $50,000 fine.
Yeah, so hopefully he plays. Van Vliet at 7,900. Like, obviously he's got a monster ceiling. You've seen it several times this year, including last game against Houston. Anunoby's at a reasonable price point, but there's nothing really that stands out here against a Denver team that, doesn't play very fast. They are 23rd in pace over the last month. They're 11th in defensive rating. There's just nothing really that stands out to me from Toronto.
Okay. Yeah. So earlier in the year, he left the game early. He left the court early.
Yeah. He like went to the locker room early after I think he fouled out and then just like went to the locker room or something.
In the prior game. Yeah. I don't know. You have to look at this team and think that they're in utter disarray right now. And
Kyle Lowry's on his way to Philly for Tyrese Maxey. Hopefully.
You think?
I mean, that's been the rumor.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
I'm hoping it happens.
Sixers should have traded Maxey when they had the chance. He might be okay. I don't know. But I can tell you this much. Denver laying 3 points, just given the state of affairs in Toronto, I like that. I like that quite a bit. Denver's just a markedly better team than Toronto right now. And I don't see things getting better anytime soon. If they do, it's fine. But Denver -3 in this one. And it's not even like Toronto plays home games anymore. So it is what it is. Go to oddshopper.awesemo.com too and shop these odds from all different books. Whatever's legal, whatever's in your state, we got you covered. Go to oddshopper.awesemo.com, totally free. You can track your bets. You can set up notifications for when bets hit or when odds hit where you're looking to hit them on, where you're looking to bet them on. All different books. You can shop across all of them, find the right bets. And if you haven't signed up on them yet, go over here and use some of these referral links because you get ridiculous sign-up bonuses. Some of them are like $500 bets, ridiculous stuff. These books are trying to get people on their site now that sports betting is opening up across the country. So always take advantage of that. But everything we have at OddsShopper is totally free. Anything else for this one?
No, that's about it.
All right, let's talk about Boston and Milwaukee then. Celtics 4.5-point dogs, 230 total against the Bucks. Quite frankly, the Celtics, another wildly disappointing team this year. You would assume this game stays relatively competitive. You've got Jason Tatum back in action. They're pretty much healthy for the most part. Kemba Walker is going to be out there. The only one that isn't is Tristan Thompson. So does anything stand out for Boston?
No. I think Jaylen Brown's a little bit more favorably priced on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. But we talked about it last game when Kemba was out, that Brown gets a bump without him. Tatum gets a bump without him. Now you're bringing him back and, Brown and Tatum are still certainly capable of having good games. It is a fast-paced Milwaukee team, but also a solid team defensively. And there's just, outside of ceiling considerations in tournaments, they don't really stand out, I don't think, at their price points. Like if I'm just trying to predict which one has the better game at a similar price, I'd feel better about Sabonis than I do about Tatum. I feel better about Gordon Hayward than I do about Jaylen Brown, given, the matchups. And, Kemba's salary, I think, is okay, but point guard's actually a pretty deep position today relative to the others. Marcus Smart at $5K on FanDuel is certainly fine from a point per dollar standpoint. Daniel Tice has played well without Thompson, but I think that there's enough power forward / center value that he doesn't really stand out. So it's another one where I'm not prioritizing anything from Boston. I think that if you wanted to go to the Celtics, you're looking primarily at Tatum, Brown, and Kemba as usual. But there's just several plays that I like more than any of those guys.
All right. Milwaukee, let's assume for a moment here that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be active. Now, he did practice on Tuesday, but Budenholzer called him questionable for today's game. We have to pay a lot of attention to this. Now, I will say, though, Giannis has only missed 2 games. He does not miss a lot of games. So right now I have him in. If he doesn't play, everything changes, especially given that Chris Middleton's price hasn't come up that much. Came up $400 since last game. Speaking on DraftKings, Drew Holiday coming off a huge game in only 30 minutes has gone from 6,800 to 7,200. Now, 2 things here. 1, salaries haven't come up that much. 2, a question that you and I got about blowouts and being able to predict them and all of that stuff on Twitter the other day. I think this is a perfect example of, even if a game does blow out, these guys can still have huge performances because Drew Holiday went well over 2 fantasy points per minute and he only was on the floor for 30 minutes.
Yeah, obviously Giannis makes a huge difference here. Like if he's in, he's really the only piece that I'm interested in from Milwaukee. Like Bobby Portis's minutes disappear. Drew Holiday is a little bit more expensive, and his production obviously drops off when he's playing with both of Giannis and Middleton. Middleton's production takes a hit, and he's not exactly cheap. So if Giannis is in, he's really the only piece that I'm interested in. And even then, I wouldn't go so far as to say priority, because you do have Luka, you have Harden, you have Jokic. These guys all produce at similar rates to Giannis. They all play more minutes than Giannis, even though Giannis obviously is playing more minutes this year than he has in the past. But it basically just it's Giannis or bust for me if he's in.
Okay. If he doesn't play, you want to talk about just changing the foundation of a slate. You mentioned at the top of the show that, this is huge news. You're absolutely right. If Giannis is out, what do we do? I know the obvious answer, play Middleton, play Holiday. I think we kind of nailed Bobby Portis the other day, and just not that he wasn't popular already, but in saying, even if he only plays 24, 25 minutes, he could still have a huge game. And he had a really solid 38 fantasy point game, points, rebound, 18, 10, double, 4 assists. We'll take that all day long. Usage was pretty solid off the bench, even though he didn't start. If Giannis doesn't play, once again, these guys come heavy into the mix tonight, even on an 11-game slate.
Yeah, if Giannis doesn't play, then you get these guys looking like very good plays once again, because, the Celtics aren't the best matchup, but I don't really care when you're talking about taking someone off the floor that has a 30% usage rate, has a 30% assist percentage, and has almost a 20% rebounding percentage. That just opens up so much stuff, for Drew Holiday to pick up stats in a variety of areas. Same for Middleton. Bobby Portis did not get the start, but still played big minutes. Pat Connaughton got the start last game. We have to see what they do here, because that was actually, I think it was matchup based against the Pacers, because if you remember, Bobby Portis was in the starting lineup, and then Miles Turner didn't play, and then they took him out of the starting lineup. So not sure what they would do against Boston, but either way, Portis does produce at a high rate when he's out there. Pat Connaughton played like 33 minutes in that game. So it just opens up a ton if they're out, with Middleton and Drew being the two priorities.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. Bob, what's Bobby Portis priced at now?
53 on DraftKings.
And what was he last time? 41. So,
30,
that's
40. Yeah, he got a nice price bump. He was 37 on FanDuel. Now he is, where did he go? Now he's 5K on FanDuel. So, he did get a price bump. He still probably is a little bit too cheap, but he's at least at a price point now where like last slate, it was kind of just like, I don't really care. It's almost impossible for him to fail as long as he steps on the floor. Now he at least has to play reasonably well.
Yeah, absolutely. Power forward, not center on FanDuel, though, which is making it a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
If Giannis sits, though, that changes the game up a lot. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, the two priorities?
Yeah, if Giannis is out.
All right. Yeah, of course. We still do not know. By the way, I know that Boston's playing at a slow pace, but guess where they ranked in defensive rating over the last 30 days?
I know they're actually worse than I thought. They were like 22nd or 28th.
28th. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, they have not been good.
No, it's been really bad. Now, the good thing is their offensive rating is top 10 over that span. That just very simply makes for a good matchup, because hopefully they can at least stay competitive.
The other thing to remember is that Marcus Smart was out for a while.
Yeah, that is a big difference. He's really one of the scrappiest defenders in the league. So I'm with you. Got a couple super chats rolling in here. Let me hit on these real quick. Gene, Kim, did we not just say the other day this guy's always winning? He hit one again yesterday.
I saw he got like second to Rinpack or something.
Yeah, Rinpack was second. Jane was third, but I think it was like $40,000 and $20,000 respectively. So congrats again, man. Another super chat. He says, am I crazy for really liking PJ Washington, Oladipo, Royce O'Neal, and Aaron Gordon totonight? I don't know, dude. You've been winning a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the safe answer and say, no, that's a phenomenal decision.
Yeah, I'll say, do what you do. But I think they're fine. Royce O'Neal's never someone that I feel great about. Cody Zeller's probable, so that's a little bit of a knock on PJ Washington if Zeller starts. But outside of Royce O'Neal, I like those guys.
All right, sounds good. And I appreciate you, Jordan, keeping me up on all of these. Andrew Kang, thank you once again for the super chat. Do you prefer Wood or Rudy Gobert on FanDuel?
I'd lean toward Christian Wood, but I do think it's pretty close.
All right. Want to move on to the next one then? That would be Charlotte, Houston.
Yeah, stuff to actually talk about in this one.
Yeah. So Charlotte 3-point favorites, 222.5 total. The Charlotte Hornets, obviously have no LaMelo Ball for the rest of the season. Cody Zeller, who was out last game, is now probable for this one. Gordon Hayward coming off a strong game. Terry Rozier, even at pretty low ownership, was great last game. Devontae Graham was basically Devontae Graham-esque. And then Malik Monk is just one of these guys who is so unpredictable, one of the more enigmatic players out there, but he did get 27 minutes in this last game off the bench. So there is a lot to talk about, especially against the Houston Rockets. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, both sides of this game, teams that are playing fast and not playing much defense. Even if you think that the Hornets slow down a little bit without LaMelo, still not a good defensive team. Houston's been playing in, top 10 in pace over the last month, bottom 10 in defensive rating. And with Ball out, the rates haven't really changed much for guys like Hayward or Rozier or Graham. But what I think does change is that the playing time becomes more solidified. Like, whereas you were in a lot of games when you had Graham and Rozier and Ball healthy, you were getting, 30 to 34 minutes from Rozier. He played 38 minutes last game. I think you'll pretty consistently start seeing 35, 36 minutes from him. Same goes for Hayward, who for the season has averaged over 34 minutes per game, but over the last month was down to like 32 minutes per game, in part because of blowouts. But I think you'll more consistently see 35 plus from him. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy this year. And then Devontae Graham, as you said, not the best player. He had that hot streak last year that pretty quickly went away. But he still averaged 0.87 DraftKings points per minute in 25 starts this year. He's averaged about 32 minutes per game in those starts. He played 29 minutes against the Spurs on Monday. And this is obviously a much better matchup against Houston. So even though I don't think Graham is that good, I do think he's still a good value here in a much more favorable matchup against Houston. I expect him to get around 30 minutes, and he's just cheap enough where he stands out as a good option. Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, certainly high upside plays. I really like Hayward's salary on FanDuel in particular at 7K. Small forward's a pretty tough position tonight to have to roster two guys, and you're getting a pretty solid value there in Hayward.
Top options from Charlotte?
I'll touch on PJ Washington.
Go ahead.
So he's really expensive on DraftKings at 7,300. He's 6K on FanDuel, which is a pretty good price tag. He played 42 minutes last game, and we have seen Charlotte kind of look to play small at times. They certainly could do that against the Rockets. Zeller's probable, so I'm interested to see what the starting lineup looks like. Washington's been much less productive playing alongside Zeller than when he's at center this year. So I think if Zeller's in the starting lineup, it makes Washington riskier, but he does still have tournament upside just because the Hornets could not use Bismack Biyombo. Like, you could get 22 minutes from Zeller and then 26 at center from Washington, and he'd still be a really good play. The risky part is if you get 22 from Zeller, 16 from Biyombo or something, then Washington's probably a little bit overpriced. And as far as your Malik Monk point, the minutes for him are probably going to be volatile. You'll probably see some games where Miles Bridges plays a little bit more or Cody Martin plays a little bit more. But I do think it's pretty fair to expect 24 to 26 minutes or so from Monk. And he is someone that is capable of scoring, in a hurry. So I do think he's a reasonable option here against Houston. All
right. Makes sense to me. Now, on the Houston side, they finally got some reinforcements here. Christian Wood's been back. Victor Oladipo, John Wall, all three of these guys play. I mean, how many minutes have they played alongside each other? It cannot be a lot.
Yeah, they've only played 5 games with all three of them together.
Yeah, it's not a lot at all. Eric Gordon's still out, right? And Kevin Porter Jr. is questionable, but going up against Charlotte in a game that has, I guess, a somewhat respectable total. There's a lot of really low totals in this game. Does Houston pop up? Does anyone from Houston pop off the page to you, from Wood to Oladipo to John Wall today?
Not quite as much as guys on Charlotte do, but I do still like the Houston side here, particularly Christian Wood and John Wall. John Wall played 35 and a half and then 36 minutes in Houston's back-to-back set on Sunday and Monday. Steven Silas said that he was on a minutes limit in both of those games. Obviously, that did not happen. So I feel pretty confident expecting 34 plus from Wall, assuming that this game's competitive. He has a 31% usage rate in those 5 games that he's played with Oladipo and Wood. Assist percentage is over 30% as well. So I think he looks like a good mid-range option. And the same can be said for Christian Wood, who has averaged over 1.3 DraftKings points per minute this year. Usage rate's about 23% in the games with Wall and Oladipo. Rebounding percentage is up around 18%. And it's not a bad matchup here against Charlotte. So I think both of those guys give you really high ceilings. Oladipo has a high ceiling as well. I just put him a little bit behind Wall. But those 3 guys, stand out as good plays, I think. The rest of this team, much more difficult to get behind when you have all 3 of Wood, Wall, and Oladipo active.
All right. So no real priorities?
No, I don't think so. Wall on DraftKings at 7,600, probably the spot that I like. If I could only roster one Rocket on one site, it would be Wall at 7,600 on DraftKings.
All right. We just got ownership updated like 12 minutes ago as well. So just going through this here. Yeah, FanDuel and DraftKings, there's nobody really getting a lot from the Houston side. On Charlotte, I mean, the ownership is insane on FanDuel, right? Two guys upwards of 30% right now. Malik Monk's up there, Devontae Graham, even Terry Rozier in the double digits. That's a lot of ownership going to the Charlotte Hornets on FanDuel. On DraftKings, there's a decent amount, but nothing above 17%. But man, you see that updated ownership on Charlotte for FanDuel? That is insane.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. It's a good spot, and there's very, very cheap pricing on FanDuel. Like Gordon Hayward's $900 cheaper than he is on DraftKings. Washington's $1,300 less. Devontae Graham's a few hundred less.
Malik Monk's almost minimum salary.
What'd you say?
Monk's almost minimum salary.
Yeah, at small forward too.
Yeah. So yeah, I get it. Charlotte's going to be one of the most popular teams tonight by a wide margin on FanDuel. So keep that in mind. You've got Phoenix and Orlando as well. This game, I would imagine, is not going to be drawing as much appeal. The Suns 9.5-point favorites, 213 total, very low total here. Is there anything at all when you look at this Phoenix Suns team that catches your eye? Because I look across this entire squad and they're basically fully healthy. I know DeAndre Ayton at sub 6K on DraftKings could make some sense just because you're getting him at a discounted price point. But when you take Ayton, for example, his minutes have been scattered all over the place. He's played 32 plus in back-to-back games now. If that continues, then 5,800 could actually be a steal for DeAndre Ayton. It's just a matter of whether or not we see any consistency going forward. I do think for tournaments, though, sub 6K, if he gets 34 minutes, could actually be pretty solid.
Yeah, I have some interest in Ayton in tournaments for that reason. Like he went 8 straight games where he didn't even reach 30 minutes. And then in his last 2, he's played about 32 and 34. The minutes are risky. I mean, you have, in addition to things like foul trouble and blowouts, you have Dario Saric behind him, who's played well this year and occasionally can take some minutes away. But that's baked into his salary at this point. Like 5,800 for a guy that averages 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. There's a lot of upside there when you know that it's at least in his range of outcomes to get 32 to 34 minutes. So I don't feel overly confident in Ayton. This is also a game where I'm not super interested just from like a pace standpoint. But I do think that the matchup is better for Phoenix than it is for Orlando. And I also think that, we know Ayton can produce at a high level. It's just a matter of 1, the center position having a lot of options, and 2, Ayton's playing time ranging basically from 26 to 34 minutes in any given game.
Yeah, pretty much. Anybody else from Phoenix though?
No, not really. I mean, Booker and Paul both certainly can score a lot of points. Jay Crowder's been he's reasonably priced and he plays about 30 minutes as a starter, but he only averages about 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. Mikal Bridges plays a lot of minutes. He's an okay last guy in at small forward, but not anything that really stands out.
All right, so I'm looking at the Orlando side and seeing a guy named Al-Farouq Aminu, who, credit to you, you talked about him quite a bit yesterday. Well, you said, hey, Al-Farouq Aminu played 27 minutes the night before. If he gets similar run, he could have a solid enough game. And it just so turned out that he had a ceiling game.
Yes, I don't want to take too much credit. I said the guy could outscore the corpse of Paul Millsap.
Right. And he did by a lot. But
by like 3 times what Millsap scored.
but what you made was a pretty salient point, and I don't want to overlook it because sometimes you don't need to be in love with a player to at least consider rostering him. And the whole idea here was that nobody was rostering Aminu basically at the same price point while people were playing Paul Millsap, who is a corpse at this point.
Yeah, and it's the same thing tonight. Like Al-Farouq Aminu's 3,700. He's probably going to play 27 or 28 minutes. The matchup against Phoenix is tough. I don't like Aminu, but if you're building a lineup and you need, like if you're building a tournament lineup and you have 3,700 left, your options are guys like PJ Dozier, Al-Farouq Aminu, Justice Winslow. There's not a big difference in range of outcomes for those guys. So it's very similar to last night. Do I think Aminu has a big game here? No, I don't. Do I think he plays enough minutes to be a decent point per dollar play at 3,700 on DraftKings? Yeah, I think he probably does.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's possible too. I worried that he only played less than 12 minutes in the first half of last game, but I don't know. Maybe
I also feel better about him if Terrence Ross is out.
Right. Yeah.
And,
so
and I
Ross,
use better very loosely there.
Russ and Randall both still questionable today. Aaron Gordon, pretty vocal about wanting out of Orlando for obvious reasons. Do you have any interest in the rest of Orlando as big home dogs?
I think Gordon probably is the easiest guy to get to, especially on DraftKings where he has point guard and small forward eligibility. The price tag isn't great, but we talked about it yesterday, and especially if Randall's out again, Aaron Gordon's been getting minutes with that second unit. So like when he's played without one of the point guards on the floor this year, he has a 35% assist percentage. Granted, he's been out there with Evan Fournier with the second unit. So, I mean, that's someone else that handles the ball a bit. But Gordon overall this year has a 20+% assist percentage. He's a good fantasy play. He's playing a bunch of minutes. The matchup though is still not very good. The salary not super appealing, but I think it'll be easier to get to Gordon than it will to get to Vooch over guys like Towns and Jokic at pretty close price points.
This is one of the lowest owned teams on the slate. Aaron Gordon on FanDuel, sure, getting a little bit of love, but outside of that, you look at DraftKings, the highest owned player right now is Gordon at 4.5%. There's just nothing going there.
I think that's how it should be. I mean,
yeah, so do I.
There's so many plays on this slate that are like, people obviously I'm sure have already gotten tired of me saying it, but like there's so many plays where it's like, yeah, they're fine. They don't stand out. Like if it were a 5 or a 6 game slate, I'd be more inclined to take shots at some of these guys on Orlando just because they'll be low owned and obviously they can have a good game. But on 11 game slates, there's a lot of low owned guys. You don't have to go to the bottom of the board to get contrarian plays.
Yeah, for sure. Now in the Cleveland-Chicago game, I don't know how much prettier it's actually going to get. Just looking again at ownership, because this tells a pretty big story, and you don't always just want to follow along and say, oh, well, he's low owned. I want nothing to do with him. But it is fascinating that nobody is here getting much at all. Thomas Satoransky, JaVale McGee are the two highest owned players on DraftKings for this game, Adam. So I guess we can start it off with Cleveland. Cleveland getting 6 points. 216.5 total. You look at some of the total, 216, 213, 218, just a lot of really low projected scoring games. And this is one of the lowest on the slate.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a 2016 type NBA slate.
Yeah, it sure does. Even with 11 games. So JaVale McGee, sure, great game last time out, but you're really hoping that he gives you 18 or 19 minutes and, goes 2 fantasy points per minute. And you can't necessarily bank on him doing that. So Cleveland just looks like an overall underwhelming team today. Sexton, Allen, Garland, they're all priced what seems to me to be pretty reasonably, but maybe you have a different opinion here.
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind from last game too, and it's where using a site like Popcorn Machine becomes really useful. Like we know that JaVale McGee sometimes will play close to 20 minutes, but he's basically just going to play whatever 48 minus Jared Allen equals, and typically that's going to be like 15-ish minutes. There was nothing about the last game that should lead you to the conclusion that like McGee is likely to play any more likely to play 20 minutes tonight than he was in any other game. You got a hockey line change like 6 minutes into the first quarter from Cleveland, and then in the second half you had another stretch where the Kings had gone on a 14-0 run. Cleveland basically took out all their starters. The bench went on a run to get back into the game. It was just a weird game flow where McGee picked up a few extra minutes. Could that happen again? Or could Allen get in foul trouble and, McGee ends up being a good value? Yeah, it could. But you shouldn't look at that last game and say like McGee's likely to play 20 minutes. He's likely to play about 15. He does produce at a high enough rate where there is still upside there. But beyond that, Colin Sexton, I never have an issue getting to. The guy's averaging 38 minutes per game in the games he's played without Drummond this year, about a fantasy point per minute. Doesn't stand out as a priority here. A pretty neutral matchup against the Bulls, 15th in pace, 15th in defensive rating over the last month. But whenever you're talking about someone playing 38 minutes at 7,300, I don't have a problem there. Darius Garland's salary on FanDuel looks pretty good at 5,500. Much less interested at 6,600 on DraftKings though.
All right. What about Chicago? I feel like a broken record. I told you we probably could have done this show. We probably could have done this in an hour with some of these teams.
Yeah, when I started writing the deep dive today, I was like, oh, this is going to take me like an hour. I didn't anticipate I forgot how long it takes to actually type words, but like it's such a weird slate for an 11-game slate. And it's kind of the same thing with Chicago. I mean, Tomas Satoransky, I think is an okay value at 4,600 on DraftKings. He's playing about 29 to 30 minutes in the games he has started. He's averaging 0.9 fantasy points per minute. This is a okay matchup against Cleveland, though they have actually played well defensively recently, and they are a very slow team. So I wouldn't get too excited. Like it's not as good a matchup as you would think based on how bad Cleveland is at basketball. But Satoransky's fine. Zach LaVine, I have some interest in tournaments. You know, I mentioned when we talked about that last game that you can get some pretty low owned guys without having to go to the bottom of the barrel. Zach LaVine's the type of guy where his salary is falling. He's down to $8K on FanDuel. He's $8,500 on DraftKings. The reason his salary is falling is that he does take a hit when Lauri Markkanen's in the starting lineup. He has about a 28% usage rate in the games that he has played with Markkanen this year compared to about 32 or 33% without him. His per minute production drops from 1.33 to 1.2 fantasy points per minute. So there is reason that LaVine projects worse and is priced lower. But whenever you like someone that can score like LaVine can, there's always just a massive ceiling for those guys. And so the best time to roster them is when they are low owned and or cheap. And by LaVine standards, he is cheap and he should be pretty low owned tonight. So I do have interest in him in tournaments. I think Markkanen's at a reasonable price point at power forward. He hasn't had a big game recently, but you're typically going to get 30 to 32 minutes from him. He averages close to a fantasy point per minute. He's just at a price point where his average production gives you like 5 to 6x, which, you know, isn't great, but it's not terrible. And when he exceeds that, it doesn't take much for him to give you a really good game at that salary. So some interest in Markkanen, some interest in LaVine, a little bit of interest in Satoransky, but, you know, again, nothing that I would say is like an absolute priority here.
Bulls have been fielding calls on Lauri Markkanen too. Who knows? Maybe he won't even be there tonight by the time the game starts.
Colin Sexton's out.
Oh, the basketball god's shining down upon us while we're on this game. So, all right, that's good. We talked about Chicago, not a whole lot there. Now we start. Okay, this is interesting news. I'm actually excited about this because we still have plenty of time, and now we can dig into it a little bit. Let me pull this up on the Wowie query just to see what we get, assuming you're doing the same thing. So, I guess I got to take Drummond off the floor as well, right? So you take Drummond off, you take Colin Sexton off, and per minute production. JaVale McGee, 1.32 fantasy points per minute. Not that makes a difference. Jared Allen, 126. Darius Garland in 249 minutes without Sexton and Drummond is at 0.9 fantasy points per minute. So he was the one guy I was really looking to see where he came in at, Adam. 25% usage rate and assist rate coming in at 33%. So usage and assist rate are actually really nice with Sexton off the floor. Per minute production hasn't really mirrored that, though.
Yeah, so I mean, at worst, it means that he has a higher ceiling, but also it's only like a 250-minute sample. But in general, when you see something like that, a lot of times the reasoning is just that like the player, not to say Darius Garland's bad, but like the player isn't a good enough player, at least at this stage in his career, where like more opportunities immediately translates to more consistent production, but it does at the very least give him a higher ceiling. Like think about Andrew Wiggins, you know, on average, when guys are out, his production doesn't increase that much because he's just not that good, but the ceiling gets substantially higher. And that's what you see here with Garland too, you know, with a 25.5% usage rate, with, you know, the assist percentage up over 30%. The other spot where I think you most likely see a benefit is the last game that Garland was out. Obviously it's Sexton out this time, but Garland was out, Sexton was in. Kevin Love was in that game, but Cedi Osman played 24 minutes off the bench. I think that you probably see Cedi Osman slide into the starting lineup. The starting lineup then was Sexton, Okoro, Nance, Love, Allen. My guess here is you get Sexton, Okoro, Cedi, Nance, Allen.
Garland, Okoro, right?
What'd you say?
You're saying Garland, Okoro in this one instead of
Sexton. Yeah, Garland, not Sexton. Yeah. So I think there's a good chance that Cedi starts here. I mean, it could be like Dylan Windler or Dean Wade or really anybody, but my first guess would be Cedi. And if it is Cedi, you're probably looking at like, you know, 26 to 28 minutes at 4K on DraftKings.
Cedi actually hasn't been all that bad either. You know, his per minute production's actually been decent this season. So I don't mind getting there at a cheap price point. Even if he doesn't, okay, so hold on one second here. 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. I'm okay with that at 4K. How many minutes would you project him for if he starts?
I'd feel comfortable saying 26 to 28. I think 32, 33 is in the range of outcomes. I just don't, I never feel too comfortable giving a bunch of minutes to a guy like that on a team like Cleveland, because Cleveland doesn't really care. Like they could just say, no, we want Dean Wayne to play. We want Dylan Windler to play more. Like they have Quinn Cook now. I mean, shit, Quinn Cook could start. Who knows? But yeah, I'd feel comfortable if Chetty starts. I'd feel comfortable saying like 26 to 28. I think there is a potential for more.
All right. Yeah, there's the only thing here is, and we got to pay attention. There's a lot of different ways that we could go here. Bickerstaff could
because Nance can play the 3 or the 4, and because Okoro can play like every position. Literally any player on Cleveland basically could, except for JaVale McGee, basically could start that comes off the bench.
Exactly. So we'll pay attention to that. Right now, with what we know, what are your final thoughts on on Darius Garland and anybody else here that gains from or benefits from Sexton's absence?
I really like Garland on FanDuel now. I think he looks better, obviously, better on DraftKings than he did at 6,600, but it's still a pretty expensive price point. But 5,500 on FanDuel, I thought he was a pretty good play, even if Sexton was in. Now I think he looks even better.
All right. Yeah. I don't expect a fast-paced game. Chicago right in the middle of the league defensively over the last month. But when you lose someone like Sexton, who leads the team in touches with 75 per game, actually tied right there with Garland, then, things can happen. I do think, though, that Darius Garland, while he and Sexton are tied over general opportunities per game, I think you could see him take on a really big workload today. And hopefully he's just efficient enough to do with it what we need. All right, Memphis and OKC. Let's move on here. We got 5 games to go, about 25 minutes. And then, as you guys know, we'll turn this one right over to the Live Before Lock crew. You got Josh Engleman and Greg Ehrenberg taking you up to lock. And be sure to stick around afterwards. Tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. PGA already locked, so we don't have the PGA Live Before Lock. But 9 p.m. Eastern, it's the Late Slate Show. From 9 to 10, Chris Spags, Greg Ehrenberg, be there for that. Whether you're tilting, losing, you want to make it up, there's some huge contests across the board every single night when you've got these late slates, which are most nights, especially on an 11-gamer like tonight. It's a good hangout vibe, and they're going to get you where you need to go. It's not a Live Before Log. It's not a deeper dive. It's a combination of everything late at night. And, there's still a ton of money to be made. So hang out for that one. Whether you're doing well or whether you're looking to make back some of that money you're losing, there's no other place than the Late Slate Show with Greg and Spags tonight at 9 p.m. All right, Memphis and OKC. This game was super ugly until the SGA news broke, but the Memphis Grizzlies side is still, I guess, unappealing collectively. But Kyle Anderson, were you surprised to see that he was garnering around 23% projected ownership on DraftKings, or is that right around where you would have him as well?
Like, I wasn't surprised because he fits really, really nicely into lineups. I don't think he should be that highly owned when you consider range of outcomes, because the range, the floor is very, very low for someone that has like a 15% usage rate and averages 26 minutes per game over the last month. But no, I do think the ownership makes sense as far as if you just run average projections. Kyle Anderson fits very nicely into lineups at that salary. I think he's a fine play. Like over the last month, he's averaged 0.97 DraftKings points per minute, 26 minutes per game. I mean, you're talking just using those numbers, you're talking about like 25 fantasy points at 5,100. That's fine. Obviously, he has the upside to do more. He has the ability to do a lot less too. But on average, you're just getting a good, 5x projection from Anderson on a slate. Again, on DraftKings where pricing is very tight tonight. So anytime any of these guys that actually project for like 5 to 5.5 times their salary, they're just going to show up in a lot of lineups because there's not that many guys that do.
All right. Hey guys, let's get to 500 likes. It's the same request every day, and then you'll never have to hear me talk about it again once we hit that number. If you haven't done so, hit that like, and more importantly, subscribe to the channel. That does more for us than you could imagine, and keep the free content coming. That's what we want to do. We want to be the preeminent DFS site on YouTube. I think we already are, but we only want to get better. So your support helps us get there each and every day. Someone keeps asking about your thoughts on Justice Winslow, Adam.
So I actually wrote about him in the deep dive. Like
he's played 20 plus minutes in back-to-back games.
Yeah, he's probably going to play 20 to 22 minutes. You shouldn't feel confident in him, but as far as $3,600 guys go, he at least is very involved when he's on the floor. He's got like a 22% usage rate this year. His rebounding percentage is over 10%. His assist percentage is over 10%. He's averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. most likely he's going to get you like 18, 19 fantasy points, but there's not that many $3,600 guys that offer the same sort of involvement as him. So he has a higher ceiling than most guys priced around him. So, he's fine if he ends up in your lineup. Like if I have to choose between Al-Farouq Aminu and Justice Winslow, for example, I'd give a slight edge to Winslow, I think, but it's definitely that same category of player.
All right. So earlier in the day, we're looking at OKC. I mentioned it with Josh on the strategy show, Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. It's a great show. Get your day started right. There was really nothing happening with SGA being active. And outside of Darius Baisley, who's week to week at this point, everybody was finally looking like they were going to play for this OKC team. Then you get the bomb dropped on us about SGA not playing. So I was a little bit surprised, just a cursory look before I actually dig it into it, that no one really ran away with ownership. So Teo Maledon is like 15 and 13% on DraftKings and FanDuel respectively. Al Horford's getting a little bit of love on DraftKings, but this SGA news didn't really turn anyone into mega chalk either.
Yeah, I don't think anyone looks that great. Like obviously a lot of them look better than they would if SGA were in, but pricing here is still, I don't know, not that great, because when you think about like how this rotation is going to go, Horford being in makes a really big difference. Horford's been extremely productive in games that Gilgeous-Alexander's been out this year. He's averaged about 1.28 DraftKings points per minute. I think he's an okay option in tournaments. The problem is that you have to keep in mind Oklahoma City doesn't care about winning games. They're more interested in getting their young guys minutes. So it wouldn't be surprised. Like Horford hasn't played a lot of minutes anyway this year. It wouldn't be surprising at all if he only plays like 25 or 26 minutes and Moses Brown plays, 22, 23 minutes off the bench behind them. So Horford's okay in tournaments, but I don't think stands out as like the top center option or anything. Teo Maledon, his salary is expensive enough to where he's okay. Like he probably plays 32 to 34 minutes, but you still have Svi Mikhailuk playing minutes now. You have Ty Jerome playing like 26 minutes. So it's still, it's not the situation where you need Maledon to play like, 36 minutes or something, like when the Thunder were really shorthanded earlier this year. Lou Dort's usage rate in games without SGA goes up, his production goes up, but he's not exactly cheap here either. And then Isaiah Roby, I'm expecting to start at power forward. He's been good lately, and part of the reason was that with Horford, even with Horford out, Mike Muscala hasn't been in the rotation. So you've been getting Isaiah Roby starting at the 4 and then playing backup center minutes behind Moses Brown. Now with Horford back, I expect you get 48 minutes at center between Horford and Brown. So you'd only be getting power forward minutes from Roby, which is 1, less productive, and 2, probably just fewer minutes. I still don't like much from OKC.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. Again, at first I thought there might be something there, but they're mostly healthy. When we were rostering chalk OKC, they had like 8 or 9 bodies, and that's just not the case right now. So, all right, I guess this whole game, for the most part, outside of maybe some Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Like Joe Val and John Morant obviously are fine too, but there's nothing really that stands out. Like I think Al Horford has the highest ceiling here, but again, you're just the minutes aren't likely to be that high, and I still expect a 10-man rotation from OKC, which is why it's difficult to think you're getting more than like 32 or 33 minutes from anyone. And the only person that I would think, or maybe 2 people that I would be remotely confident even expecting that from, would be Maledon and Dort.
All right, so Dallas Mavericks against Minnesota, 232 total. This actually might be the highest total on the entire slate. I'm sorry, no, it's not. It's right behind Atlanta, Sacramento. We'll get to that one last when we wrap this up. But 232 total. Dallas 8.5-point favorites. Malik Beasley still not set to return for Minnesota. D'Angelo Russell remains out, so they remain shorthanded. Dallas, on the other hand, outside of being down Willie Cauley-Stein, fully healthy team right now, and Luka Doncic on both sites is going to be the most popular. Where do you rank him among Giannis, assuming he plays, Harden, who will have no Kyrie Irving, no Kevin Durant, even Blake Griffin sitting this one out? So among Giannis, Harden, Jokic, and then Doncic, where does Doncic rank for you today?
Behind Harden, ahead of everybody else. I'd absolutely love to be getting Harden and Luka lineups. I don't know if we'll have enough value to make good ones, but I think it'll be doable, especially in tournaments. So I love Luka here. The only thing I like more on this slate is James Harden.
Okay. Easy enough. Do you want to dig into Doncic a little bit more, or does that pretty much
I mean, it pretty much sums it up, but if you need reasons to like Luka Doncic more, Minnesota, on top of being one of the worst defenses all season long and one of the faster paced defenses, they've also struggled in terms of allowing points per possession to opposing pick and roll ball handlers. Luka tied with Trae Young for the most pick and roll possessions per game this year. About 49% of his offensive possessions are in the pick and roll. He's in the 84th percentile in efficiency. It just sets up, like, even if you dig deeper beyond Minnesota's bad and plays fast, even if you dig deeper beyond that, it just sets up as a great spot for Luka.
All right, so it sets up as a great spot for Luka for all of those reasons. Minnesota plays fast. They're a bad defense. Obviously, the one concern is their offense is equally disastrous outside of Karl Anthony Towns, given their current state. But it sets up good for everyone. It's just there aren't a lot of good players on this team. You have Kristaps Porzingis, who on FanDuel is 7,500. And I got to say, I do like that. On DraftKings, I just have a tough time getting to any one of these guys with any frequency. But Porzingis, for the same reasons that you like Doncic, is he someone that's on the table for you tonight?
Yeah, Dallas, I think, is the most appealing team on the slate in terms of just like number of guys that look good at their salaries. Porzingis, I agree he's kind of difficult to get to, especially if you are trying to get Harden and Luka in the lineups. It's going to make it tough to get to Porzingis. But if you go more balanced, and let's say you can't get to Luka, Porzingis is a natural guy to turn to because he's the second scorer on this Dallas team in a good matchup. He's less expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, which is nice. He's been playing 33 or 34 minutes in competitive games pretty consistently and shouldn't have any trouble here against Minnesota. So I think he looks good. But even beyond those two guys, you have Josh Richardson, who has really struggled this year. He's averaged about 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute in the games that he's played with Luka and with Porzingis, but he's averaged 31 to 32 minutes in those games. You've pretty frequently see 34, 35 minutes. He's reasonably priced for that amount of playing time. Same can be said for Dorian Finney-Smith at 4,100 on DraftKings and 3,900 on FanDuel. And then Maxi Kleber stands out on FanDuel specifically, where he's $1,000 less expensive than he is on DraftKings. He's another guy from this team that's only averaged 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute, but he's averaging 30 minutes per game in his starts, and he's almost minimum salary on FanDuel in probably the most appealing matchup on the slate.
The only thing that worries me a little bit about Porzingis recently is just volume is down a little bit. 24% usage rate over his last 10 games. That's not bad. 1.15 fantasy points per minute. It's really not, like, they're not awful numbers, but being on a team that outside of Luka Doncic just doesn't have any ball dominant players, any guys that are really going to demand usage, I would just think he'd be a little bit more involved, and he hasn't been lately. So hopefully that turns around. He's still rebounding in a 17% clip over that span. But yeah, Luka's just been a little bit underwhelming lately is all.
You mean
I'm sorry,
Porzingis?
Porzingis, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, Luka's such a good rebounder that you're just going to have games where, like, Porzingis misses out on rebounds. You're going to have games where obviously he doesn't get a ton of usage because of Luka. But he has still averaged 1.23 DraftKings points per minute in the games that he's played with Luka this year. This certainly sets up as a spot where he should produce at an above average rate. He gives you block upside as well. So, I do like Porzingis. I think that ideally I'd get to Luka before him, though, like, as far as roster construction goes.
All right. So when it comes to the Minnesota Timberwolves, there's just not a whole lot here. We've discussed a lot about Anthony Edwards now that his price is inflated. You're talking about a guy who you're going to have to rely on scoring. And that was kind of showcased last game, or illustrated last game, where he didn't score. He did 16 points. And aside from that, he just completely lacked peripherals. You're going to get games like that. And his price point keeps rising. For me, it's just a tough spot to get to. He's up to $7,600 on DraftKings. I could be wrong, but that might be the highest he's ever been. $7,700 shooting guard eligible on FanDuel. I have a really, really tough time, and just am completely unwilling to get to Anthony Edwards. And that's bared out in ownership right now. This may be the lowest owned team overall, specifically on DraftKings.
Yeah, Edwards is another example, I think, where if this were like a 5-game slate and his ownership were really low, I'd have some interest, just because you're talking about someone with a 32% usage rate without Russell and Beasley. But on this slate, there's no shortage of guys that are going to be functionally the same ownership, even if they're a little bit higher, that, they're low enough owned that I would just like more. I mean, Dallas has played at the slowest pace in the league over the last month. They're 8th in defensive rating. Edwards is scoring dependent, like you said, which naturally gives him a high ceiling, but a low floor. And the price point's just not that great. I mean, I just feel so much better about paying like an extra $300 to get Gordon Hayward against the Rockets, for example, or, paying down at small forward so that I can get to more expensive players elsewhere in my lineup. So there's just a lot of things I think working against Edwards, where even if he does have a good game here, I think it's pretty unlikely that, one, he has the best game out of all the, alternatives, and two, that it ends up being the optimal lineup build to be grabbing a bunch of these like 7,500 to 8K guys, as opposed to getting Giannis, Harden, Luka, those type of guys into your lineup.
Towns is seeing a price hike. He's crossed the 10K threshold now. He's 10-2 on FanDuel. The ownership is so low on him for pretty obvious reasons, right? We have Jokic, we have Giannis, hopefully we have Harden, we have Luka Doncic. And now the price gap between them really isn't big enough to say, all right, you know what? Maybe Towns is the good pivot here. I'm all for pivoting to another high-priced option that has that same ceiling. No doubt about it. I really am, especially when their ownership is significantly lower elsewhere. But it just doesn't feel like Towns is that guy that I'm trying to do it with today, even at low ownership. Do you have the same opinion, or do you differ and think that maybe he's too low owned?
No, I mean, that's how I feel as well. It's another one where, like, if the slate were smaller, that would be a spot that you could look to make that pivot. But Towns has averaged 1.35 DraftKings points per minute in the 10 games he's played without Beasley and Russell. Even if you want to like discount some of those early games because he was coming back from COVID, and you want to say that he's going to average like 1.5 fantasy points per minute, which might be a little optimistic, but it's reasonable. You're still talking about like 0.2 fantasy points per minute less than Nikola Jokic on average. Then you're talking about this slow-paced Dallas team. Towns has a really high ceiling, but it's just like such a low probability play in terms of basically at his salary, needing him to beat not only, Jokic, but you need him to at least be in the same ballpark as Doncic and Harden. You need him to beat Vucevic, who, still has a very high ceiling. And then you need the cheaper centers. You need Miles Turner. You need Zubats. You need all of these guys not to have big games in order for going to Towns to be the right play. Like, obviously you need a lot of things to break your way to win a tournament. So just saying, oh yeah, you kind of need to get lucky doesn't rule someone out. But just thinking about it in terms of probability of like all those things happening, I think there's easier ways to win this slate.
I'm with you. 1.69 DraftKings points per minute for Nikola Jokic if you factor in the bonuses on DraftKings. 1.72 for Giannis Antetokounmpo, 1.62 for Doncic, and 1.51 for Harden, but that's not factoring in no Kyrie and no Kevin Durant.
Yeah, 1.75.
Is it 175?
Yeah.
So there you go. All of these guys are just miles ahead of Karl Anthony Towns, who's a fantastic player, but once you get into that price range, you kind of have to be a little bit careful.
If Karl Anthony Towns scores 55 points, you're like, okay, cool. Towns had a big game. Yep. There's a pretty good chance he's losing to at least one guy by 15 points tonight.
Yep. Yeah. And a bad game from Nikola Jokic is 55 DraftKings points.
Right.
So, yeah. Hey, SuperDraft is the sponsor of the Deeper Dive. For those of you that didn't know, you've heard me say it once, I'll say it again because it's important, and why not make good money when you can, especially when the opportunity's on the table. They partnered with Caesars Rewards. The idea here is to transform the DFS industry forever. And you know what that means is there's a real opportunity to make cash because there's going to be a ton of overlay as they look to expand the operation over there at SuperDraft. You can download the app or go to SuperDraft.io, of course. Low rake, high stakes contest, going to be huge overlay. We're seeing that in most of these contests. Be sure to sign up and check that out. Even if you're monitoring to see what the overlay looks like before you jump in, do that, right? You do it with anything else, right? Whether it's stocks, whether it's crypto, even Top Shot monitoring the market. Why not monitor overlay when it's really, given that the edge is dissolved and evaporated in so many other spots in the DFS world? Take advantage of the ability to make money on SuperDraft. 5K up top tonight on the 30K jump shot. So a nice little first place chunk of change. Maybe it's not the DraftKings FanDuel prize pools, but build your bankroll over there. Build your bankroll with overlay, and that's ways to make it work. Find ways to make money. SuperDraft is one of the best ways to do that right now, especially since you get a $50 match deposit up to $50 when you use the promo code Awesemo21, AWESEMO21, all one word. When you deposit $50 or more, you get $50 free. download the SuperDraft app or go to superdraft.io today. All right, Clippers, San Antonio. We'll start it off with the Clippers side of this one, and I'll toss it straight over to you. They're laying 6 points, 220 total. No Serge Ibaka, no Beverly again. Do you like Zubats today at his ownership? Because last I looked before the update, he was getting a ton of ownership.
Yeah, still is 29% on DraftKings.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he's mispriced. He started 4 games without Ibaka in this recent stretch. He started 5 for the season, but in the first one a couple months ago, he only played 16 minutes. In the recent 4 games, he's played 35 minutes, 25 minutes in a blowout, 25 minutes in a game where he didn't play in the fourth quarter because, if I remember correctly, the Clippers bench went on a run and he never came back. So he's averaged 30 minutes per game over those 4 starts. He's averaged a fantasy point per minute in the games he has started this year. Then you consider that, again, on DraftKings, there's just not a lot of glaring mispriced guys on this slate. The pricing is just very tight today. And so taking advantage of someone like Zubats is something that, especially in smaller field stuff and cash, you just need to do. And, so could he have a bad game? Like, sure, but he's a productive player. The matchup's not great. San Antonio is a good defensive team that plays at a slow pace, but he's a productive player who's likely to play 30 or more minutes, and he's priced to play like 25 minutes, which is kind of his floor, barring injury or foul trouble.
All right. So is that, are you on Kawhi, Paul George, anybody else today?
No, George is okay. Like he's available at a discount to Kawhi, which is always appealing because in the games that they've played together this season, George has actually produced almost the same fantasy points per minute, and he's only averaged 1 minute less per game. But just in the context of the slate, I think they're both pretty difficult to get to. I think that the matchup, again, the matchup's not great. San Antonio plays slow. They play well defensively. But if I did go to someone beyond Zubats on this team, it would be George next and then Kawhi.
Okay. So San Antonio, we have no Lonnie Walker. We have no Rudy Gay. What type of impact does that have on your opinion for the Spurs tonight?
Not much. My assumption is that the Spurs just do what the Spurs normally do, and you get a few guys soaking up those minutes and not really making an impact. From a DFS standpoint, my interest still lies in the main pieces here, specifically Derek White. He's only 5,200 on FanDuel. He's 5,800 on DraftKings. We had seen him kind of be limited by foul trouble and blowouts for several games coming back from injury. But since then, he's played at least 32 minutes, and I believe 4 straight games, played another 35 minutes last game. He started 7 games this year with both of DeJounte Murray and DeMar DeRozan active. He's averaged 0.9 DraftKings points per minute. He's got a 21% usage rate, about a 15% assist percentage. Not a great play, but certainly someone that gives you a pretty high ceiling at a cheap price point. The Clippers have struggled a bit defensively as well. So I think White is a secondary option here. You have a high ceiling for guys like DeRozan and Murray, plenty of usage without Aldridge, without Rudy Gay for whatever minutes he would have been on the floor. But they are both priced, I think, about where they should be as well.
All right. Well, we screwed this one up again, and we have 2 games to get through in about 3 minutes. So let's go Brooklyn and Utah here. Sore neck for James Hart. He's questionable. He played yesterday on the front end of a back-to-back. I think the only reason he wouldn't play today is if they say, just sit this one out against Utah. You're probably going to lose anyway. But the only thing, and I want to turn this over to you and run with it on both sides because I want to give these guys all the bit of information we can. The Philadelphia 76ers keep winning even without Joel Embiid. So if Brooklyn's actually looking to still make a push to get to that 1 seed, they can't really just seed any games and say, all right, we'll make them back. That's my only point to make here. I think Harden plays.
Yeah, I think he does too. The only way I see him not playing is if, kind of like you said, if the coaching staff tells him he is not playing. But yes. Yesterday, basically in the pregame, Steve Nash was like, he's been struggling with his neck a little bit. He's going to warm up and tell us if he can play. In that situation, I think Harden plays. Yep. So I'm assuming he plays. If he doesn't, they said yesterday that Tyler Johnson would start. I assume that would be the case again today. He's 3,600. He would be fine as a value. Utah, though, they've been really good this year, obviously, and they are a good defensive team, but they have played at a much faster pace over the last month. They've also struggled a lot more defensively, basically middle of the pack in defensive rating over that time. So, I think that it's, I would rather Harden be facing the Timberwolves or something, but, still 1.75 DraftKings points per minute in the games he's played without Kyrie and without Durant this year. Similar rates with Houston whenever Westbrook or Paul were out. So Harden is still the number 1 play on the slate for me. Blake Griffin being out potentially opens up more minutes for Luau Cabarrot that's a cheap guy that you could take a shot at. We haven't projected for a ton of ownership right now. I don't necessarily think he should be the highest owned guy on the slate, but I do think it opens up some minutes for him. Nick Claxton on DraftKings at 4K is an okay value. He's played at least 22 minutes in 4 straight games now. He's averaged 1.1 DraftKings points per minute for the season. But again, Harden just clearly the number one priority here from Brooklyn.
Yeah, no question. If he ends up sitting, do you go back to Bruce Brown or do you go to TLC?
Yeah, I mean, go to TLC, go to Tyler Johnson, go to Bruce Brown. There's a good chance that they kind of all underwhelm in terms of raw points and that the Nets just get absolutely destroyed. But those would be the guys that, are relatively cheap and get a step up. Okay.
What about Utah?
Mike Conley, 5,800 on FanDuel, I think looks good. 6,300 on DraftKings, a pretty good price point as well. Should play 31 minutes, assuming this game's competitive, and he's averaged over a fantasy point per minute this year. Rudy Gobert, very high ceiling. Donovan Mitchell, very high ceiling. Brooklyn, not as great a matchup as it was earlier this season after the Harden trade, but still not a bad matchup either. I think that either of Gobert or Mitchell, Conley in that mix too, they're all guys that are, I think, good tournament plays, not necessarily priorities for me as far as like cash flow.
Okay. Atlanta, Sacramento. We close this one out. Turn it over. We're going 1 minute late, guys. Sorry. Bear with us. On the other side, you've got Live Before Lock coming up. Atlanta and Sacramento. Your thoughts, the spread right now. Sacramento, 3-point dogs at home, 236.5 total, the highest on the slate. Give me your top plays from both sides.
Really, really, really good spot here for Atlanta. Trae Young is not very expensive. He's 8,700. I think he's a really interesting tournament option. Like if you don't go Harden and Doncic, or you don't go with 2 studs, for example, Young's the kind of guy that could just drop 55 fantasy points here on the Kings. Terrible defensive team, terrible defending the pick and roll. Young, again, tied with Luka for the most pick and roll possessions per game. And Sacramento plays at a fast pace. So I like Young. I like Capella in tournaments. Like you're going to see a lot of ownership going to Zubats, and it's deserved, as we talked about. But if you are getting away from that, you have a $7,300 Capella, who's averaged 1.36 DraftKings points per minute this year, has a great matchup against the Kings. He's only averaged 27 minutes per game since the coaching change, so there's risk there. But there is the potential for him to play a couple more minutes for a variety of reasons. Gallinari's also questionable, which could help to solidify Capella's minutes. Could also open up a little bit more for Bogdan Bogdanovic as well. But I think that in particular, Young and Capella both have massive ceilings in the spot.
All right. And then for Sacramento?
Not a whole lot there. Tyrese Halliburton, I think, stands out the most.
He's 5,700 on 28 points. Solid. Yeah, really solid game.
Yeah. He's 5,700 on DraftKings and FanDuel. Atlanta's been the second slowest team in the league since the coaching change. They've been one of the most efficient defenses, but you're probably getting 32 or 33 minutes from Halliburton. So I think he looks good. I think Harrison Barnes, we talked before, he gets a bump when Bagley's out. His rebounding percentage without Bagley this year is 12.5% compared to 9% in the games that Bagley has played. So already, averaging 37.5 minutes per game. Now I think he should produce at a higher rate as well. He would come in behind Halliburton as far as guys I like on Sacramento.
All right. Simple enough. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us. And girls, thanks for hanging out with us as always. We'll turn this one over to Live Before Lock and see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive presented by SuperDraft. Good luck tonight, everyone. We'll see you back here soon. Send us some screenshots. Want to see some wins. Peace.
See you guys.
Worst slate of the year, man.
Believe so.
11 games on the night before the trade deadline. This is just a massacre waiting to happen.
Well, the good thing is that DraftKings has their biggest tournament of the year, though.
Yeah. They got their eye on the prize. I mean, to be fair, no day feels like anyone can win it more than today. I can't imagine what the optimal lineup is going to look like today. Just some truly terrible garbage stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be also guys we're not even considering now, because there's going to be players traded in the next hours and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even if you just look at the optimal percentages from Alex right now, the amount of guys that are north of 10% are pretty limited. And I mean, there's only 2 above 20.
Yeah,
I guess.
And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, March 24th, I think, but it's been a couple hours since I've had to say the date, so I'm just going to go with it and keep going anyway. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg, and we are here to, try to keep the reins on an 11-game slate on the day before the trade deadline. It should be crazy. The one benefit that we have, at least for the first hour of this show, is that there aren't a lot of games early. But in that 7 to 7:30 window, when we switch over to the SuperDraft half hour, I have a sneaky suspicion we might get a flood of news. Let's ignore all of that and start here. Greg, how are you?
Good. And by the way, also, even if you don't play on SuperDraft, all the more reason to stick around, because it could be like yesterday's show where Terry and I were doing live before locking the extra half hour. Players are getting ruled out then, and then I did the late slate show with Spags. We had James Harden up in the air. So all the reason to stick around, even if you're unsure if you're going to be playing on SuperDraft tonight. There's going to be a whole bunch of other news to cover. Yeah, this slate is rough. Like James Harden is questionable in a time slot where there isn't even anybody to swap off of him. Right? Like if he gets ruled out, if you're in on James Harden, and by the way, if he plays, I expect him to have a good fantasy game.
Yeah.
But like if he's out, there's nowhere to, because I expect it's going to be a game time decision like he was yesterday. There's a huge gap in the games, and there's nothing to do if he gets ruled out.
It's a really, really, really tricky situation. I don't know how you manage it. I mean, let's get into it right now, because I think that's one of the bigger pieces of the day. We'll start with that. We'll kind of hit on the same sort of Giannis piece. Normally we're hitting on guards to start. By the way, hit the like button. If I'm seeing this correctly, we've got 2,500 people on here and like 400 something likes. So once again, Lofty's just simply not doing his job before that. Tom, take a look at this, dude. Do we have like a staff review coming up anytime soon? I think it's ludicrous. Anyway, hit that thumbs up. James Harden, questionable tonight. Let's start with just this basic question. Where do you land on if he plays or not?
It's so hard to say. So right now, just because he's projected for so much ownership, I'd rather go elsewhere, right? Like if we get to a point where it becomes really contrarian, then I think he becomes more appealing. But right now, I mean, we're looking at him in the last ownership update we've got 6 minutes ago. James Harden is coming in at 22% ownership on DK. On FanDuel, he's projecting for 28% ownership. So at that kind of number, and by the way, I think if he remains questionable heading into lock, he's going to become much more contrarian. But at least as it stands right now, I just took him out of my player pool because it's like, all right, if he's going to be popular, I don't want to deal with this situation. But I know that he's going to be less popular, and I'm just hoping he remains popular.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yes.
If they were playing on a neutral floor, the Portland Trailblazers, their active roster right now, the Portland Trailblazers play the Utah Jazz. What do you think the line is in that game?
What are we assuming the health situation is here?
Like today, everybody that has been in is in. So like you're not getting Nurkic or anything like that, but like the normal guys that are all healthy are healthy.
Probably Utah by 6.5 points.
Okay. Portland was a 2-point favorite over Brooklyn yesterday. The line now today is 11. Stands to reason just in that sort of comparison, that line would be somewhere around 9.
It's also the tail end of a back-to-back, which is worth points also, though.
Is it?
And it is. It's the tail end of a back-to-back is worth points to the spread. The other thing, too, is that Harden is questionable. And I think the line if Harden's out, Utah is going to be like a 16-point favorite. If Harden plays, that line's going to be a lot tighter. Like that Nets team without Harden, without Kyrie, that's a terrible roster.
So I agree with you. I think what that line is showing us is that it's like a true 50-50 line. Yep. I think there's a lot of room for it to move in both directions, given what we know about yesterday's line. I thought that was interesting when I looked at it just as an extra piece. I have no idea if he's playing, but just from the ownership that I've seen, I think it's just kind of easier to like play one of the other guys and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's where I'm at here for two reasons. Number one is just it's so much less of a headache at the moment. And then number two also is just there are other viable plays too. It's easier to have Giannis in your player pool right now than it is to have Harden in your player pool, just because that game starts earlier and there's so many other pivot options. Like I said at the top of the show, if Harden gets ruled out and you have him in, Trae Young is still definitely a viable pay-up option, but you're leaving so much salary on the table at some point.
Let's not forget, this is a terrible matchup too. I don't care what Harden has done to roast Utah in the past as the Houston Rockets. This is a different situation. Maybe a lot of that carries over, but even still, nobody wants to face Utah in a DFS matchup. That's not helpful, generally speaking. It's a really tough situation. I'm shocked that he's carrying as much ownership as he is.
I still have him projected really well if he was to play, but I don't have him projected. I have like him, Giannis, and Luka very, very similar. Like it's not like I have Harden projected for 70 fantasy points and the other guys are projected for 60. Like they're all in the same ballpark of each other.
Yeah. And we're on the same page there. I think that it is way closer than it seems. And with him playing in the late night game against Utah with all of this ambiguity here, I mean, so we have the boom bust tool. I'm going to pull that up right now because I think this tells a pretty good story. Let me get to it quickly because I didn't have it up, but because I didn't know that I was going to go to this little thought process. But we have the boom bust tool. This is one of our featured tools. I believe it's actually free today. Nope, the big board's free today. Sorry, people, can't look at it. I will talk about this stuff, though. I knew that it had a double B word in the title that was free. Big board, boom, bust. I mean, that's an easy mistake to make. So here's where we stand. I'm going to look just at the expensive guys today. So we've got Harden, Luka, Giannis, Jokic. Towns is going to end up in this filter, but to me, he's not exactly in this same sort of range. We have Harden to be in the optimal 22.5% of the time. Giannis, 18.5. Luka, 15.5. Even we'll say Jokic at 10. Jokic gets treated a little bit differently just because of the position. He doesn't have the same sort of flexibility as everybody else. The difference between 22%, 18%, and 14% on an 11-game slate today is pretty marginal. Two of those guys, Harden and Luka, are in the 20s. Giannis Antetokounmpo is projected for 7. To me, if you're playing in this monster DraftKings tournament today or any large field stuff, immediately you're switching to Giannis as your pay-up option.
Yeah, and I mean, also still with the caveat of we don't know if he's playing either.
Sure.
So something else
easy
there,
fix if he's out.
Yes.
So what's your plan if you have James Harden in a lineup and he gets ruled out at 8:31?
What are the start times of the games today?
There's only 2 games left after that.
Oof. All right. Well, it's totally different on FanDuel and DraftKings, right? So FanDuel, I guess you go to Donovan Mitchell. Like FanDuel, it's totally untenable. On DraftKings, on DraftKings at least, like I could prioritize Trae Young as a pivot play, and then if I have any other remaining salary spots, then I could try to spend up somewhere else. FanDuel, I don't know what the hell you do. And just to be honest about it too, that's one of the main reasons I have lineups on DraftKings tonight. I do not have lineups on FanDuel because I feel so much worse about how to handle the Harden situation on FanDuel.
Yeah. So the most expensive player in the late games is clearly Harden at 11.3. The second most expensive player is De'Aaron Fox at 8,900. Okay. That's a little bit different and obviously at a different position. At the shooting guard spot, you're clearly going to either Donovan Mitchell or Halliburton and then hoping you have another spot elsewhere. Would you want to set any rules to guarantee every Harden lineup to have someone from the 10 o'clock games as well?
No, I prefer to make my lineups right now and just not have Harden in the player pool. Like that's what I really think is the easiest way to go right now. Something else I did do, and by the way, because you talked about the boom bust tool, I actually write an article on the boom bust tool, which though I'm just writing about the players that project to have the best boom scores of the day. And then also some of the players that have the worst bust scores or the highest bust scores. Somebody who I didn't like, at least just looking at the boom bust tool early in the day, was Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who was projecting for like 15% ownership early in the day. Now I have him in my player pool on DraftKings just because what I did to adjust for the Harden news, a bunch of those value guys, I just gave them a couple extra minutes to make them look a little bit better as plays. So guys like TLC, Tyler Johnson, Bruce Brown, I boosted them a little bit, not to the full extent that I would if Harden was just totally be ruled out right now, but just to the point where it's like, hey, I'm getting some of these guys in my player pool.
I think that makes quite a bit of sense. If I were on FanDuel tonight, I think that I would, if I were using Fantasy Cruncher, which to me is the best tool on the market, and I was nervous about Harden, I would create a group with James Harden as the key player and everybody else that you are willing to roster from the 10 o'clock games in that group with an at least one. Because I don't think it's crazy to have one guy from either one of the, like from the other three teams plus the rest of Brooklyn in that lineup. But you're going to need some sort of additional flexibility. Otherwise, you're burning $5,000 in salary and you're not winning anyway.
And then we have to talk about, did you see the what Nick Nurse said about the Raptors today?
Something like there's like sadness or
no. Well, he said everybody's going to be active today, but also smiled. No. And to me, it's like, well, number one, what's the point of playing Kyle Lowry today? So report came out, I think it was from Shams, maybe it was from Woj, or maybe it was Mark Stein. It's one of those three guys that the Raptors front office has a deal with Kyle Lowry that they've agreed to trade him to a contender. So with that in mind, Kyle Lowry is not going to be on the Raptors beyond tomorrow, unless just something goes catastrophically wrong in the negotiating process. Yet Kyle Lowry's playing tonight. And it's not, you can't even make the argument of, well, it's a home game because they're playing in Tampa Bay this year. So I don't understand that. I don't understand why like Aaron Gordon's playing after requesting a trade. And by the way, these guys, like you could have them request trades and you could work on trades. And just because you sit them out for this one game, it doesn't mean you have to, it doesn't mean that like there's any sort of obligation. Like you just hold them out in case of either it being a trade during the night or just to avoid injury. And if you don't have trading, you just play them again the next game. I don't understand why these guys are playing tonight.
Well, I'll say this much, at least for Aaron Gordon. I would play him in that, like, I wouldn't want to trade him either. Like, I wouldn't mind if something happened and I had to keep Aaron Gordon because I actually think that he's like young and good. So I think that Orlando can save themselves from them. So depending on what the deal is, obviously. For Kyle Lowry, though, yeah, there's a 0% chance that I would be putting him out on the floor tonight. There's just literally no reason. It just hamstrings your flexibility. Although, look, like if you're Toronto, like every game counts now if you aren't really burning it down. Like if you're just moving Lowry, you're probably still trying to make the playoffs. So like you kind of want to squeeze everything out of him as much as you can. But for the Gordon one, I would play him because I just want him to stay around.
By the way, Malcolm Brogdon and Miles Turner both available to play tonight. So that is a key piece of news.
It is.
Not the keyest pieces of news. That would still be Giannis and James Harden. But at least those are less value options to consider.
So we did kind of just touch on some of the more high-priced guys and try to give some thoughts on Harden. How are you feeling about Giannis, Luka, Jokic? I guess I'll lump in Karl Anthony Towns, but to me, just a different tier today.
Yeah, so right now on DraftKings, I could say my highest priority play of the pay-up options is Giannis. Number 2 is Luka, and it's just because I have them projected very, very similarly, but Luka's projecting for way more ownership. So therefore, Giannis just becomes the higher priority. Like the difference to me projection-wise between Giannis, Harden, and Luka, like I have them all within like 1.5 of each other.
I have them all packed pretty tightly. Harden at the top for sure. Luka not too far behind. Giannis not too far behind. Jokic really not too far behind either. Do you think anybody's getting slept on tonight at the top? We can include more guys that aren't just necessarily right at 10K or higher, but like, is anybody getting slept on that's a true stud tonight?
8% ownership for Giannis on DraftKings. That qualifies as getting slept on to me.
That's fair. He is absolutely getting slept. Well, yeah, no, I mean, he's getting slept on. That's just craziness because it's not about the Q tag there. Like Harden's 3 times his own in a later game.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. And I think the boom bust tool tells the best story. Harden 22.5, Giannis 18.7. Harden by a nose, and it's 3-1 in ownership. To me, that's just wildly, wildly incorrect. What a slate, man. What a slate. Okay. You mentioned Kyle Lowry and why in the world would Toronto play him? Same story for Aaron Gordon. Do you see anybody else that you're keeping your eye on of like, oh, I definitely don't want to play that guy because I think he's going to be playing for a different team tomorrow?
Which, by the way, if somebody starts though, like I don't really have exposure to the Toronto guys right now. Like I would love Fred VanVleet if we find a starting lineup and Lowry isn't in, but like as of now, I'm just taking the words as they are, right? If coach says everybody's playing, I can't just assume they're out because I feel they should do something differently. So like, cause I'll feel like an idiot if I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting Fred VanVleet in all my lineups. And then it's like Kyle Lowry starts like, well, Fred VanVleet sucks now. And there's no reason for it. And the coach said that Kyle Lowry is going to play. So I didn't make any kind of leaps right now. Right now I'm looking at the slate as is. And I'm kind of thinking that even if we don't know guys who are going to be traded right now, I do expect we're going to get starting lineups like 15 minutes before games are about to start, and just player X is randomly not in the starting lineup. That's what I think is going to be
Victor Oladipo is not playing for the Rockets or something along those lines.
Yeah, Victor Oladipo, by the way, that's somebody else who seems very likely to be traded based on reports we've heard.
Yeah. So Terrence Ross ruled out. Chasen Randall and Mo Bamba both available to play tonight. Also, Garrett Temple is available for the Bulls. Does any of that information that I just said really make a difference to you? I'm guessing Ross to an extent.
That makes Evan Fournier look better, but the Suns are a brutal matchup. This is also the tail end of a back-to-back for Orlando. And I just think there's so many better plays in the mid-range that I'm probably not going to get to these guys. Like Vucevic is a pay-up option. I'd rather pay up for Jokic, find the extra space. I'd rather get to Towns. I'd rather get to Giannis, who's not picking up enough ownership. So other places that I think we could go.
Perfect opportunity, since we're 20 minutes in, to 1, ask for more likes, because that is my gimmick. 2, I'm going to hit on some super chats, which I think we got one. I see a second one in there, but that one doesn't seem to be a question, and I can't see the top of it, so I'm just guessing that one's old. So this one's from Steve. He says, do you still like Aminu tonight? Yes. As much as I could like Aminu, I guess.
It's a very points chasey play.
Is it?
Yes, he scored 44 fantasy points yesterday. It was the first time he scored over 20 fantasy points in a month.
Well, yeah, but like, you know that I'm not chasing points.
No, but I'm saying from him, like, because I know that's why he's asking the question.
Well, no, I mentioned him earlier today as a value play that I was interested in. That was my like lower owned in comparison to some other value plays that were picking up some ownership. Yeah, I mean, like, to me, he's still a viable play, especially because we have this question mark hanging over Aaron Gordon. If Gordon happens to be out, that solidifies Aminu even more. I think that he works as a value play, but I really don't think that it's hard to find those types of plays today either.
Yeah. By the way, Gene, who also thank you for the super chat, says I need to tweet more. Could I tweet more? Like, I have like an embarrassing amount of tweets that I've sent out over the course of my life. Like, I don't know that I didn't even join Twitter that long ago, and I have tweeted how many thousands of times. I know this information somewhere. I don't even know where to look it up, but I probably have something like 30,000 tweets, and I haven't even been on Twitter that long.
Do you want to know the answer?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
Okay. The answer to how many tweets you have is, why are you not coming up?
See, nobody knows. This is something.
Oh, because okay, never mind. I was typing your Twitter handle in incorrectly. 24,701.
Imagine seeing that number and being like, it's not enough.
That's more than mine.
And
when did you join Twitter?
I started joining. End of 2016.
August 2008 for me.
Yeah, I think.
By the way, way ahead of the curve here.
Yeah, you were. I'm way behind. That's why you have more followers than me. Also, because
that's pretty much all new too.
I think also because you probably put out more valuable content than me. I just put out, a few jokes, apparently not enough jokes a day. I need more than 26,000 of them on Twitter. But also Gene DMs me. So there's somebody else who doesn't get enough of my content. Yes, that we DM and we talk every night and we go over what lineups we have live.
A Dean says, my super chat went away, but can one of y'all say I hate happiness without the H's? No. By the way, Gene, just completely cleaning up as of late. Picked up another top 3 finish yesterday on FanDuel. Not too shabby, man. Not too shabby. We still love seeing it. Magic lineup in. MCW, Evan Fournier, Al-Farouq Aminu, Nikola Vucevic, and Aaron Gordon. So Gordon and Fournier both in the starting lineup for the Magic. Who knows? They could be Boston Celtics by the end of tomorrow. We shall see.
They could be Boston Celtics at halftime.
That'd be interesting. That'd be great if Danny Ainge was like just getting ready to call it into the league and like they collide and tear each other's ACLs and the Celtics are like, we were at the 1 yard line again. Did you
see Woj's story about that? It was very funny.
Yeah, I did. Just sort of being like, people don't believe they can make trades with the Celtics.
Which is true. Every year there's those stories how like the Celtics almost made a trade and then they didn't.
And it's crazy because the most important one in all of that is the one that paints them in the worst light, the Kaminsky 4 picks trade for Justice Winslow. Anyway, guys, hit the like button. We've got one more show coming up later tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, NBA Late Live Before Lock. And once again, it's going to be incredibly valuable. Spags will be here. Greg, you will be back again, taking everybody up to 10 p.m. And that is pretty essential on a day like today.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be like yesterday where, I mean, we broke down James Harden warming up footage like it was the Zapruder film and I was trying to say like, here's the health of his neck. And we ended up getting it right. He ended up playing and we were right on that time. I feel a little less confident about him playing on this slate, though.
I'm sure he got himself a nice massage from head to toe today and feels right as rain. He probably called Robert Kraft for some tips, too. Free content for today. NBA Big Board. Like I said, not the boom bust tool, but another tool that has 2 B's in the title, plus NHL top stacks. So if you want to play anything on the ice, which I assume is significantly easier today than the NBA is shaping up to be, don't be afraid to go check out the NHL top stacks tool. I don't see any new news in the past couple seconds. So let's move on, talk a little bit about value plays, or maybe just some of the guys that are picking up ownership that, seems a little bit out of whack or perfectly warranted, because I think we could go both ways. There are some guys that are picking up a ton of ownership. Like, let's say, how do you feel about Darius Garland now without Colin Sexton? 5,500 on DraftKings, projected for close to 30% ownership. We don't have him worth that much right now.
By the way, I am just refreshing. It looks like we just got an ownership update, so I'm looking to see if that changed anything. What is Garland at now? So Garland's 29.8% ownership on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Garland coming in at 7% ownership. So pretty big difference between the two sides. There's a big price gap. He's 6,600 on DK and 55 on FanDuel. Interestingly, I like him more on DK than his current ownership. Yeah. I like him less on FanDuel than his current ownership. So vastly different play on the two sides. If you're playing cash games, then definitely Garland at 5,500 is a strong cash play. He's still a good GPP play if you were just look at his projection points per dollar, but it's an 11-game slate. There's a whole bunch of players to consider, and it's hard to get to Darius Garland, for me at least, more than a 30% clip.
The most owned player on DraftKings right now, I'm assuming you saw it in your sorting, but if you didn't, do you have a guess?
I do not.
That would be one Cedi Osman, 4K, projected for 35% ownership. How are you feeling about Cedi Osman, the chalk play of today's slate as of 6:26 p.m.?
I actually really like Cedi Osman on this slate because I think I right now I have him starting for the Cavs in place of Sexton and Garland playing point guard. I'm going to have to rearrange my minutes if that's not the case, but at least now, because Sexton also, this was unexpected news we got right before the show started. But yeah, assuming that Osman starts, I'm going to like him a whole bunch on this slate.
Number 2 in ownership, someone you mentioned before, Alex, not appearing to be quite the fan. Both Cedi and TLC, well, spoiler alert, it's TLC, both showing up with pretty sizable negative leverage on DK. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, well, kind of. So the TLC, number one, he played really well yesterday. And like I said before, I do write an article on the boom bust tool and let the percentages come out. And one guy who I featured as a bust was TLC. But that was also before James Harden was ruled questionable. So I don't actually think that people are using the same thought process as me. I think people are rostering TLC because he played well from a fantasy perspective yesterday. He didn't play a ton. He had a low usage rate. I think he played 27 minutes with a 12% usage rate, but he made almost all the shots that he took. He had 4 rebounds and 3 assists. So he ended up scoring over 20 fantasy points. So I think people are looking at it and saying like, hey, the Nets are shorthanded. Look at the box score for TLC last night. Therefore, I want to play him. To me, earlier in the day, I thought that he was going over-owned, but now that James Harden is questionable and his status is truly up in the air, like I said before, I took guys like Tyler Johnson, gave him a couple extra minutes, TLC a couple extra minutes, just so I have these guys in my player pool in the event that James Harden ultimately doesn't end up playing.
Steve Clifford said that Fournier and Aaron Gordon will play their regular minutes tonight. Steven Silas said that Kevin Porter Jr. is questionable tonight, but would be surprised if he plays. And he declined to name his starters, probably because he doesn't know if one of them is playing today.
Yeah, I would think that's almost certainly because they're working on a Victor Oladipo trade.
Yeah.
By the way, another super chat here from Soul Dope 1234. He left us. Yeah, he left us a handful of super chats yesterday. He says he doesn't know what to do with the Harden situation. Buddy, welcome to the crowd. Please guide me on FanDuel. Who should I spend up for? Really like Garland and Rozier, so reluctant to play Doncic. Here's what I think. It depends how risk averse you are. My personal preference is just to leave Harden out of the player pool right now. I think that's the easiest way to go about it, especially on FanDuel. It is so like I'm almost certain this is going to be a game time decision situation. We're probably not going to know until like 9:40 whether Harden's in or out. That's Eastern time, 20 minutes before the game starts. If Harden is out on FanDuel, it's so hard to make pivots with the positionality and how it works on FanDuel. So, I think the safest way to go is you just leave Harden out of the player pool and just go about building your lineups that way.
I would sort of do what I mentioned before. If you're playing 150, make the group. If you're just building a lineup for yourself, put in someone else at a different position that is going to be playing at 10 o'clock, and then figure out what you can do with the salary of Harden plus that guy in the combinations of everybody that's left. It's pretty easy. You just got to, if you know that you have $16K to spend over those two positions, then figure out what permutations work. Figure out the guy that you want to take Harden's spot at shooting guard and see whatever's left. Like that's really the best that you can do. Just have your plan in place early. We also had Stephen B with a super chat. Greg, Laffy, Adam, and Josh are great with the tweets. Thought-provoking tweets. Thank you, boys. I appreciate you. Appreciate you too, Stephen. Certainly do.
I'm just looking at Houston right now, just trying to figure out, because now, assuming Kevin Porter doesn't play, and we're going to say both you and I agree that the reason they haven't put out a starting lineup is there's a fairly decent chance that Victor Oladipo gets traded.
Victor Oladipo is unavailable for the Rockets tonight for personal reasons.
Oh, all right. Personal reasons. All right. That's what we're calling it. Do you remember what John Wall's stat line was last game on limited minutes?
8 of 30
yes.
from the field. 36 minutes, I believe.
Yeah. So imagine.
Triple-double?
Yeah, imagine. So limited minutes. If his minutes were unlimited, what are they going to play? 50?
Yeah. I don't even want to talk about the fact that he was on limited minutes because Christian Wood was also on limited minutes. He sucked. Wall played straight through his limit and dropped a triple-double with 30 shot attempts.
Christian Wood also, but part of the reason also that Wall played so many minutes, took so many shots. Christian Wood, if I remember correctly, picked up 2 fouls like 2 minutes into the game, so that impacted him. Sure. And so that kind of naturally lowered his minutes. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out now, looking at Houston, no Oladipo, assuming no Porter. I'm gonna like John Wall and Christian Wood a decent amount now on this slate. Yeah. These are both guys I'm gonna get to at a likely overweight percentage.
I mean, I liked Christian Wood a lot one way or the other, and he wasn't picking up as much ownership as I really thought he deserved. By the way, Thunder starting lineup: Maladon, Dort, Pogoshevsky, Roby, and Al Horford. That is a mishmash of dudes right there. Al Horford's probably looking around like, man, I used to like play with good people.
Meanwhile, the Thunder are not even that far out of the playoff picture. They just keep winning games. Doesn't matter who's in or out for them. That team rules.
This is truly wild. Okay, so this is not a DFS question. We're at the midway point, 6:30 here. We got another 29 minutes to go before lock. Plus, Greg and I are sticking around for an extra half hour for our sponsor, SuperDraft, and we're going to dive into their stuff in a little bit. Here's my question to you. Where is Victor Oladipo off to? Other than like the luggage store.
Let's see. Victor Oladipo, it's so hard because he's a pretty significant contract. He hasn't even played all that well this year when he's been on the court. He's still a pretty big injury risk. What even makes sense for, like, I can't even think of a landing spot that makes sense. I have a feeling he's going to end up on some totally unexpected team. Like he ends up on like the Knicks or something weird like that.
Wouldn't shock me there. They don't have to give out as much salary as some other teams would. I have no concept of what the Rockets think they can get for him.
I don't even know why they wanted to trade for him.
That's fair. I mean, I guess keeping Karis LeVert was also on the table.
Yeah. And it's not like the new Karis LeVert was sick or dealing with anything else at the time. Like they could have had Karis LeVert, and now they're getting Victor Oladipo, and they're going to definitely trade him for something lesser than Karis LeVert.
I don't know how true that is.
I'm pretty confident in it. I don't think he's very much value right now.
Okay, so if they get a pick and a young player, late first, rookie flyer type guy, I'd rather have that than Karis LeVert right now if I'm the Rockets.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Karis LeVert isn't as young as people would think.
Right. 27, 26 and a half. Round up.
Yeah, he came into the league a little bit older, and then also he got hurt I think it was a broken foot for his rookie year, so we didn't really see him play then. So yeah, he's a little older than people would think. I think like Karis LeVert, a lot of people think it was like a 23 or 24-year-old.
Yeah. So that is going to be something to monitor. I'm anxious to see where he ends up. We get a lot of questions like, oh, what does that mean for his fantasy output? Nothing. Trades are meaningless for DFS. Guys have salaries. Their salaries will just move to wherever they're supposed to be. Like, you can be in good spots, but that just means that your salary is just going to be higher in a little bit. So for like season-long stuff, it's very, very important.
It matters for this individual game for John Wall and Christian Wood, who I am updating my lineup to see how much I get to them right now.
Brogdon, LeVert, Holiday, Sabonis, and Turner starting lineup for the Pacers. Is there any chance that Victor Oladipo is on his way to Atlanta to play under former coach Nate McMillan?
Yeah, just what they need, another wing. Like I just don't think he fits there unless they're gonna do like a John Collins or Victor Oladipo flip. But that feels a little wonky for both teams.
Can you imagine John Collins playing next to Christian Wood? What an offensive fit.
It would be that would be something. But yeah, I mean, it just I don't think that makes sense.
Ooh.
Oh, news.
JB Bickerstaff says that Cody Zeller looks like he is a go tonight. He adds that he would likely start the same group, Rozier, Graham, Hayward, Washington, and Biyombo, to maintain continuity from the previous game. But Friday's game against Miami could look different.
Well, I'm not going to worry about Friday. I barely know what's happening tonight. I'm definitely not going to start worrying about Friday's games.
That makes me like Devontae Graham less.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, he can't play more minutes than he played last game now. Or at least I would have to expect him to play a little bit less.
And I would rather see him out on the floor with Cody Zeller than Biyombo. Normal starting five for the Grizz: Ja, Brooks, Grayson Allen, Slow-Mo, and Joval. Fast and furious lineups and news and all of that good stuff. So I'm going to change gears now a little bit. Who are your favorite plays on this slate?
As of right now, it's now become Christian Wood and John Wall.
Well, I don't hate it. I'm a big fan of Christian Wood today. He was a high-ranked contender even earlier, and that is certainly going to go up as I update minutes to take Victor Oladipo off the floor. What else you got besides Wall and Christian Wood for tonight?
So sticking on let me see if the ownership's updated too. Sticking on the same team, I think that now Sterling Brown is going to become one of my favorite value plays on the slate. And if it's anything like the other slate, where we saw John Wall we found out that he was going to have limited minutes. I gave more minutes to Sterling Brown, and Sterling Brown ended up being, I think it was 2% owned on DraftKings and like 0.5% owned on FanDuel. So his price has come up a little bit just based on what we saw from him ownership wise. I don't think he's going to get to be overly popular. But I'll reserve to make that judgment until we see the ownership projection. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm getting to a whole bunch of Rockets. I'm just running new lineups now with the updated news for Oladipo.
Let's see what else we've got here at the top. I am obviously a huge fan of Christian Wood in this spot. He actually ranks somewhere in like the top 5 for me on FanDuel, but Harden clearly still at the top. Have we gotten an ownership update?
Not yet. The last one is from 12 minutes ago. So those are the numbers we went over last time.
52 seconds ago.
Oh, all right. So now it's new. All right. This is going to be the Houston guys. So this is big.
Nope. No, it's not.
Oh,
not of anything substantial that I can find.
John Wall, 14% owned. I assume he was lower than that before. Where's Christian Wood? Christian Wood. Yeah, I think this is a little different. Christian Wood was 8% before. Now he's 11. on DraftKings.
Well, those are the same number.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope that's what the ownership is because I'm going to be way overweight to those guys.
Yeah, whether he's 8 or 11, I can't imagine that's really changing your outcome all that much.
No, like my 3 favorite plays right now are John Wall, Christian Wood, and Sterling Brown. Sterling Brown projected for 0 ownership. So yeah, that's probably still going to be updated. But I mean, unless Sterling Brown is like some ridiculously uber chalk play, I like him a whole bunch.
Yeah, as you should. To me, he looks incredible. You can make a case relative to his salary, at least, that he's a better option than John Wall today. Wall at $8K. On DraftKings, though, where Sterling Brown is $300 more expensive than he is on FanDuel, and Wall is actually cheaper than he is there, it's not even close. John Wall is unequivocally the best option. And really, a fantastic, I mean, at $7,600, dollar for dollar, John Wall might be the best play on DraftKings.
He took 30 shots last game. We said that before, but I mean, like if he's gonna come anywhere close to that kind of usage and shots, and why not? Like what else is he doing in Houston?
So imagine if he makes them this time.
Yeah, he didn't even make them last time when he broke the slate. And the only reason he didn't actually break the slate is because nobody rostered him because he was supposedly playing limited minutes. So yeah, I agree with you. Right now, he is the best play on DraftKings, and Christian Wood and Sterling Brown right behind him.
20 minutes to go before we get to lock. So it is time for me to shout out the sponsor of this show. That would be SuperDraft. They've got the 30K jump shot going tonight, 5K to first. And you can sign up at SuperDraft using the promo code Awesemo21, AWESEMO21. Get a free $50 when you deposit $50 or more. You don't have to worry about salaries here. We're worried about multipliers. That's a very different mechanism at the site. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my SuperDraft projections. This is something we're going to talk about as we get further along in the slate. But someone like James Harden tonight doesn't have a multiplier. Whatever he scores, that's what you get. Same sort of story for Luka Doncic. Not the same story for my number 3 play today, however. That would be De'Aaron Fox, 1.3 multiplier. So you multiply whatever he gets in fantasy points by 1.3. Or think about it like this. You get a 30% bonus on whatever he scores. Either way, it's all the same sort of scenario. You don't have to worry about salary, so you could roster anyone that you want. Go to superdraft.io or download the app in the App Store. You could do either one of them. We're hanging out for an extra 30 minutes, breaking down SuperDraft and any news that might come in. So stay tuned. That's SuperDraft. No limits, more winning. I think it's about that time to take some questions because I think that's really the only way to go further at this point. We'll let the people dictate everything. Premium Slack. I'm here. Get your questions in now. We're going to have a ton of them. YouTube chat, do the same. Whatever you need. Let's answer some questions.
Well, let's do it.
Mark Daignault, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could miss a
legitimately concerning injury because it lingers for so long. Like we've seen guys like TJ Warren. Remember what happened with him? He tried to play through plantar fasciitis in the bubble, and that's kind of ultimately led to him missing this entire season. So, I mean, the Thunder, who I know that I was saying that before, like way overachieving team, they're only 2.5 games at the playoffs, the play-in game anyway. Realistically, they're not going to make it to the play-in game. They have nothing to play for. It's much more important for them to make sure that SGA is healthy for the future. There's a chance he doesn't play again this year.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Same thing, I believe, that plagued Goran Dragic at the end of last season, too, while he was in the playoffs. Incredibly painful. And if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, probably not the year you're trying to run SGA into the ground.
No.
Willie Cauley-Stein and Tyrell Terry will miss the game tonight for the Mavs, but James Johnson has rejoined the team and will be available to play.
That will change nothing.
First question that we got in was from Seth, so I feel like I should skip it. But no one else is really asking any questions, so you win by default, Seth. Dort versus Osman on FanDuel.
That is Osman for me.
What the hell position do these idiots play? Oh, yeah, it has to be, right? It has to be Chetty. He's 3,700. Dort's $1,200 more expensive than him.
Yeah, we don't have a starting lineup for the Cavs yet. I do assume, like I said before, I think Chetty's going to start. They'll play probably a little bit bigger of a lineup, and Garland will start at point guard. Even if Chetty comes off the bench, I still think he's a better play than Dort. But the other thing also is think about Osman, the production we saw from him earlier in the year when the Cavs were shorthanded. Like, he was somebody whose price got up to like nearly 7,000, if I remember correctly. Like, he was good for a really extended period of time. So yeah, it is definitely Chetty for me.
Okay. Now we're starting to get a couple more questions in here. Cuban A asks, is there a way to mass delete FanDuel entries? Maybe not any longer, but the quickest way to do it is to send them an email and ask them to do it for you.
Yeah.
They usually, well, at least for me, they get it in like a minute or two, which always makes me feel a lot better because I did it this past Friday. It's like, hey guys, can you rip me out of everything that I'm doing here?
And by the way, like, that is definitely a good way to go about doing it. And it's the best time efficient way to do it. Because if you try to do it all by hand, it's impossible.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, I literally couldn't if I wanted to. Over 200 something lineups. What else we got going on here? Is KJ Martin playable today?
Not for me.
Yeah, not really. Kevin Porter Jr. definitely not playable for me today. Is 50% Zubac too much? I don't know which site. I don't know if that will matter to you. My answer would be absolutely yes.
Unless you're playing like two lineups, that's too much for me, especially now because like Christian Wood is viable on DraftKings. Like Zubac was somebody who I was getting to a decent amount earlier in the day as a value play. But then as you start to get later in the day, you see what the ownership is for some of these guys. Other value plays start opening up. Zubac is in my player pool, but I'm underweight to the field on and I'm nowhere near 50%.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing it. Not a guy that I would want to be getting to today. Is his ownership still preposterous? I haven't looked.
I think it's 20% now.
Yeah, it was a lot higher than this morning. Now it was 21 this morning, and I thought that was terrible.
I think I saw it as high as 30 when I was doing my Boom Bust article earlier.
Yeah, not my cup of tea today. I mean, most of the most owned guys today are going to look over owned today. Like, our Boom Bust tool, like the leverage numbers that we're seeing, is pretty staggering. Huge negative leverage on, this is just from DraftKings off the top, on Chetty, but he still looks good. TLC doesn't really look good. Halliburton has some negative leverage, but still looks good. But Slow-Mo, Nick Claxton, Malik Monk getting ownership that Alex doesn't totally agree with. A lot of these 18 to 20% owned type guys are coming in the optimal lineups for Alex at like half of that mark. Oh, we got a ton more questions now. Thoughts on Maladon on FanDuel?
Maladon, he is priced at, why can I not find Maladon? 4,600. So Maladon, also picking up minimal amount of ownership, but to me, like, this is a play that I don't really feel strongly for or against. 4,600 single digit ownership. That all looks about correct for me. If you play him, I don't have an issue, but I don't think you can play him either, but not a priority for me. Where is Sterling? Actually, Sterling Brown at 4,200. I much prefer him to Maladon.
I don't have I'm happy to get to Brown. I don't have a problem getting to Maladon. This is one of those days where I don't mind. It's really hard to like truly recommend many guys. There's probably like 10 guys that you could be like, yeah, definitely this guy. But you could really make a case for any of these guys to play 30 plus minutes today. That's a hard one to narrow down, especially for Maladon with SGA out. We did just get two more super chats. One from Christopher Christopher Thomason. Chris, is Halliburton worth starting tonight? Absolutely.
Yeah, Halliburton's one of my favorite plays on the slate.
And then what would be your core four to start a single entry? I think you're looking for Tar Heels, T4 Heels. He had the core four. So if you're looking for absolute garbage plays that no one wanted, he would be the guy you would want to hunt down. I don't know. Who are your four favorite plays?
On FanDuel or DraftKings?
No site given.
All right. So I'm just going to say DraftKings because I'm playing on DraftKings tonight and I could just look at my ownership and see the guys who I have the most of right now, which is John Wall, Sterling Brown, Christian Wood, and Luka Doncic.
I like it. Getting back into premium slack here. Is Derek White an okay pivot from Halliburton on DraftKings? I think yes.
Yeah, I prefer Halliburton though.
I also prefer Halliburton by a pretty wide margin. But again, Derek White's been playing like 34 minutes a game. That is not the worst decision to make on a slate like today. Favorite power forward on FanDuel under 3,900.
Let's see. Who are?
I think there's only one option. I literally think there's only one option.
Maxi Kleber.
That would be correct.
All right.
I don't have it. When I sorted it and like refreshed my table, I only had Maxi show up. So he won by default. Is Luke Kennard worth a dart throw on FanDuel? Absolutely not.
No. Here's the other thing too. An 11-game slate, you don't have to take crazy dart throws, right? No. Like there's value plays. Like Sterling Brown is almost a dart throw at this point, just given on that at least our latest projections don't have him for much ownership. But he's somebody who's going to be starting and playing significant minutes. You don't need to take a dart throw on an 11-game slate for guys like, hey, I hope he plays 18 minutes.
There's no utility in it. Like you don't have to solo out yourself on anybody that's like a question mark today. We're going to see crazy amounts of dudes go for like 8, 9, 10, 11x today that are fully unplayed. And that doesn't mean that they should have been played. Stick to the guys. Look, here's the deal. Go to the boom bust tool, sort by optimal lineup percentage. If they're in like the top 20 of that ranking, focus on those guys most. If you're taking anybody below that, make sure they're unowned. It's really the best that I can do around a day like today.
Yeah, and also on a slate this big, the ownership is generally going to be a little flatter than normal. Like it's not like somebody's going to pop up and be like, oh my God, do I play a 60% owned James Harden or anything? Like there's a lot of options. It's 11 games.
What else we got? Thoughts on a low owned Bruce Brown? He's an enigma today.
So here's the range of outcomes with the play. If James Harden plays, Bruce Brown, crap play going against the Utah Jazz. If James Harden is out, Bruce Brown, who is not going to have ownership, all of a sudden becomes one of the strongest looking plays on the slate. So I have a small percent of exposure to Bruce Brown, and then it just becomes what is your risk tolerance and how much upside are you shooting for? Because there's certainly a scenario where Bruce Brown becomes one of the top plays on the slate. It's just how comfortable are you with the possibility that James Harden plays and then Bruce Brown just sucks?
Right. Bogdan revenge game for contrarian value on DraftKings.
No, like no to all of that. Like I don't really like Bogdan for this. Although with that said, Danilo Gallinari is questionable to play. So if Gallo is out, that would make him viable. But as it stands right now, I don't think there's any reason to play him. He hasn't played well this year. Even when he was unrestricted and playing full minutes, he was averaging under 20 fantasy points per game. And now there's so many guys that competing with minutes for Gallinari, Hunter's back. Tony Snell has carved out a spot for him in the rotation. So it's hard to see much upside or a real road to playing time for Bogdanovic.
If Gallo is out, Bogdanovic is 4K on DK tonight. I like him as a contrarian option in GPPs because I don't think that he's a bad fantasy point per minute guy normally. He was 0.9 in my model as like a general rate, especially against Sacramento. Like I don't give a shit about the narrative perspective. Yeah. Sacramento's defense is just terrible. I like it if Gallo ends up being out. Any love for JaVale McGee in a DK GPP? Absolutely not.
Is this carryover from the Slack conversation before?
Unfortunately, no.
So JaVale McGee did score a whole bunch of fantasy points yesterday, but he did it in 19 minutes. And we see that every once in a while from JaVale McGee, right? There are games where JaVale McGee, because he's a decent points per minute fantasy producer, there will be times where he plays 18, 19 minutes, scores 30 fantasy points, but it happens like once every 3 or 4 weeks. And
you're going to need a lot more than 30 tonight too.
It is really hard to count on him reliably to have a big fantasy game when I can't expect him to play more than say like 18 minutes.
Yeah, I completely agree. Is it a bad idea to fade Harden in a FanDuel GPP?
Not at all.
Not at all.
What's his ownership at now? In the latest run.
29.
Still very popular.
Yeah. Can you play Maxey and Kristaps Porzingis together on FanDuel? Yes. Wood and Tate together, bad correlation. No.
I just Tate isn't one of my favorite plays on the slate. So that would be the limiting factor there.
He's like my 9th favorite power forward.
Yeah. So it's I don't have an issue with those two combined together. Other than that, I just don't like Tate individually as a play.
Yeah, I would go to Roby or at a slightly lower salary, just given that setup. Any other news coming in? Nothing since James Johnson, which is
Giannis Antetokounmpo will play. That came across. It was really funny. I looked at my phone for news, and that was a fairly significant news item.
That is not a news item that is anywhere that I see.
It just came up on my phone. Let me see.
From...
I don't want to say the source.
Okay.
All right, let's see.
It is not in my beat writers list right now, and Schmantashy Schmabs hasn't hit it, nor has the news god, the true news overlord of all NBA news.
Yeah, so this did come across on my phone from a competitor, and I don't know where they got the news from.
I'm not seeing it yet. Keith Smith of Yahoo Real GM Celtics blog did announce that he will play tonight.
So I guess that's where it was from then.
Yeah. Schmodo Schminders does also have that out as of a minute ago, just in case that was your, if you were subscribed to Schmodo Schminders.
So yes. Okay. It looks like Giannis is playing.
Yeah. Yeah. I trust that tweet that I just saw.
Yeah, Keith is a good source. So now, okay, so I really, really like Giannis a lot now. I'm curious to see if his ownership will change. It was something we talked about before. It's really weird that Giannis was projected for so little ownership and Harden was projected for so much ownership. When we were talking about it before, that Giannis's ownership looked low, and we couldn't even chalk it up to him being questionable because James Harden was questionable too. I do have a feeling now this is going to drive Giannis's ownership up right before lock, and this will bring Harden's down a little bit.
Wouldn't shock me there. Any thoughts on Holmes? He's been on a tear lately. He's just a guy on the slate to me.
I don't have exposure to him. There's so many centers I like, especially on DraftKings. Like
he's overpriced on FanDuel.
Clint Capella, Christian Wood. Now that he's a strong play on DraftKings, it makes it hard for me to think that Rashawn Holmes is any bit of a priority.
I agree. 7,100 on DraftKings is a bit better of a price, but I have Jokic, Giannis, Wood, Porzingis, Towns, Claxton, Gobert, Sabonis, all ahead of him. You can make a case for like Roby, Siakam, Capella. I don't mind getting, like, again, Rashawn Holmes is a starting center in the NBA that should play 32, 34 minutes tonight. It's not a problem that he's in your lineups, but the largest majority of all the guys today are like 5%ers, and you're hoping you're right. It's an 11-game slate, even ignoring the trade deadline. This is as hard as it gets.
Yeah, it's tricky.
You can't miss, because in a contest with 125,000 entries or something like that, someone's going to have 40 plus in every spot, and you're going to have to hunt that down. No more questions popping in. How's Ayton looking tonight? Not great.
He's somebody who I think his price is relatively fair, yet he's picking up a bunch of ownership. He has played better as of late, but his production has been way less than I expected coming into the year. I thought that Chris Paul being added would really help Ayton. I thought that he'd work really well in the pick and roll. There's just not enough usage in the offense, though.
Yeah. Devin Booker, though, looking fantastic. Still no news. Cole Anthony is without a timetable for return, but that's not particularly interesting. 3 minutes to go before lock. So if you don't have your message or your lineups in, hurry up and do it. Any thoughts on Anthony Edwards? I've had a few on Twitter as of late.
As have I. I mean, what kind of thoughts we're looking for? I don't think anybody wants to hear me rail off on the same things I did from the other day, but
he's just a guy again today.
Yeah, he's gotten to be really expensive now. I think we know the usage is going to be there for him because that's something we've seen pretty consistent. But still, I think there's other places I would rather go. The price has gotten to be too steep for me.
You getting to any Desmond Bane tonight?
Not Desmond Bane. I actually, you know what I have to lower is I was getting to like a decent amount of OG Anunoby just because I thought I thought there'd be a chance that Raptors guys were going to be out, and I want to nerf that a little bit.
Walker, Smart, Brown, Tatum, Tice, starting lineup for the Boston Celtics, a starting lineup that is plus 12 or something like that in the minutes they have so far. So that is the type of lineup that will right the ship. As of now, sources say the Cavs are not planning to hold out JaVale McGee.
Yeah, well, maybe the trade market wasn't very hot for him for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Favorite 3 shooting guard plays on FanDuel, and that could be probably the last one we get to before we transition to some SuperDraft talk.
Halliburton. I know Halliburton's one. I don't even know the other ones off the top of my head. I think Devontae Graham was still in the mix.
Harden is one for me if he's playing, but obviously that is
yes.
It's
a risk tolerance issue.
Yeah. Halliburton would be 2 for me. I think you could pick between Marcus Smart and Paul George, and it's pretty close.
That all looks good to me.
6:59 and 30 seconds. Guys, you have 30 seconds to get your lineups in. So while you're doing that, quickly hit the thumbs up button on the video. That way we get credit for it. And then hit the upload button. But definitely hit thumbs up before upload. Nothing can go wrong if you do that. Devontae Graham, sneaky playing point. I don't know about sneaky.
No, he's picking up a whole bunch of ownership.
Yep. What else we got here? Ooh, I'm punching microphones now. That's not helpful. I think we're just going to have to say locked. We are locked, which means it is time to transition to SuperDraft and to keep a very close eye on all of the news that's going to be coming in, because this is the time of the day where I expect it all to come burning down. Only one game at 7. We have 2 games at 7:30 and then 5 at 8 o'clock. This is the window of time where we start getting a lot of that 8 o'clock news. So this should be a blast. I'm taking a look at my SuperDraft projections right now. I'm heading to SuperDraft. You can do the same, superdraft.io. Use that promo code Awesemo21 to get yourself $50 if you deposit 50 or more. They've got the 6K to first jump shot. They're taking in about 2,000 entries. They've got 670 already. So about 1,300 spots still remaining. You're hoping to get a little bit of overlay if you can, but I like the tournament. I like the payout structure. 6K to first, 3K to second, another 1,500 to third, and another 1,000 to fourth. I really like that. It's a relatively flat structure that should make you feel at least a little bit better. FanDuel, on the other hand, going a different direction. 100K up top. They're starting to make the second and third payouts. Sometimes it's 40K, which it was yesterday. Today, I think it's 20 or 15. That kind of makes me want to not play that tournament any longer, but I'm going to keep jamming away at it. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about SuperDraft. I want to hit on some of my top plays, and I'll hit you with my 5 highest ranked plays. That would be James Harden, Eek, Luka Doncic, De'Aaron Fox, Nikola Jokic, and Kawhi Leonard. Do you have anybody on SuperDraft that stands out to you?
Well, number 1 for Alex, his number 1 play overall is Ivica Zubac. And I know that I was a little lower on Zubac than Alex was today, but I still think, a 1.75 multiplier, that is definitely a little bit different than where he was priced on, say, DraftKings at 5,500. But number 1 overall does seem a little high to me.
He is 23rd for me.
How many minutes did you give Zubac?
I gave Zubac 30 minutes.
It's a lot of minutes.
It is a lot of minutes. Raptors starting lineup: Lowry, Van Vliet, Powell, Anunoby, and Siakam.
Well, I wonder if they're just not going to end up trading Lowry.
You're going to buy him out.
No, I'm not going to do that either.
No kidding. Jackson, George, Leonard, Morris, and Zubac starting for the Clips tonight. Us and the boss man, a little bit different on Zubac tonight. We'll see where that actually ends up. Some of the other guys that I have near the top: Kristaps Porzingis, Christian Wood, Giannis, that we know now that we know he's in, Trae Young, John Wall. If we're looking for guys who a little bit down ballot type guys with higher multipliers. 1.75x multiplier Derek White, who I actually have ahead of similarly 1.75x multiplier of Ivica Zubac. Would you rather have Derek White or Zubac at the same multiplier tonight?
That would be Zubac for me. At least looking at my projections, I still have Zubac ahead of him just for standard scoring. So then we consider they have the same multiplier at Zubac.
Okay. I have Derek White by a point, so he just ekes him out a little bit. PJ Tucker active for the Bucks. Bryn Forbes not active today. He is out. Bucks starting lineup as usual: Holiday, DiVincenzo, Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. What else we got going on here? Guys, make sure you're heading to SuperDraft to get into that main contest or any contest you see. They also have the $8 to get in NBA Super 8. That's $3K up top. Another $1,500 going to second. Similar entries and stuff, just a little bit cheaper of a price point. You can get into the $5,000 guaranteed and one. You can 150 max that bad boy. Only $1 to get in. $3K up top. Kevin Porter Jr. officially ruled out. What else do we got? Ty Lue says Terrence Mann has taken the next step. I wonder if that results in anybody for the Clippers getting shipped out.
I assume that just means, though, that he is going to be a regular part of the rotation now.
I guess. We'll see.
I'm trying to look at... Somebody did ask about Luke Kennard earlier. Maybe it means that Luke Kennard is going to be a little bit less important in the rotation. How about that? How about that contract he gave to Luke Kennard before the season?
Right. It's weird, right? Like, it was an overpay at the time, but it was like, okay, you know, he's a 3-point shooting wing. They're rare-ish. You know, I understood where they were going, and he's just been useless for this Clippers team. That was not something I expected. I didn't expect Nick Batum to be a more core of piece than Luke Kennard this year.
Well, that's part of it too, is so like Nick Batum looked totally washed, and he's given them decent minutes. And I mean, he's played better than Luke Kennard, so he's just ended up being a higher part of the more important part of the rotation. But it's weird to me they never even gave Luke Kennard a chance, right? I mean, they gave him, it was like 4 years, $64 million, something like that, if I remember the numbers correctly. And then they just never played him. So like they didn't even give him a chance to fit in.
Yeah, it's a truly weird outcome. He has been the absolute worst Clipper per B-ball index's wins added and sorted by their LeBron stat. Negative 2.3 plus minus, literally a 0 wins added, the lowest guy on the team, lower than Amir Coffey, lower than Kabengele, who just got shipped out. He's just, nobody wants Luke Kennard. He's been truly dreadful. Sorry, Luke.
But Batum has also kind of changed how I view other players. Like in terms of when we just see players who are veterans that used to be good that just all of a sudden kind of looked washed on like a bad team. That's even why like Blake Griffin has given the Nets some decent minutes over the last couple of games. Yeah. And I mean, they had to obviously give up nothing to get him, but I just kind of wonder, like, hey, Blake Griffin in 15 minutes per game, that's not a bad role player to have. Yeah. And he looks so much better than he did with Detroit.
Yeah, it's surprising to me that Blake Griffin would have at least a little bit more motivation playing for the Brooklyn Nets than he would playing for Detroit.
Yeah, my favorite thing was that he dunked almost immediately. He was on, it was like his third possession with the Nets. He had a dunk.
I'm surprised he didn't go between his legs coming through the paint on that one to just really stick it to everybody. Like, even he couldn't hide his jubilation coming back down the floor. It was incredible. Jordan Klein sharing the screen a SuperDraft right now. I didn't notice that until right now. He's the best producer in the world, folks.
Should we build a lineup?
If we should build a lineup, let's do that. Do you want first pick or next two?
Give me the first overall pick in the SuperDraft draft.
Take it.
All
Jordan
right.
Klein, you good for this? Bingo.
All right.
The best in the biz.
With the first overall pick in the SuperDraft draft, I am going to select Giannis Antetokounmpo to put into the forward position. I'm just going to kind of assume that there's somewhat similar ownership on SuperDraft to what there is to other sites. So give me Giannis, who's coming in with less ownership than the other stars.
All righty. So you're going to Giannis. I am going to go to the guard line. I think that makes things a little bit easier, at least for my first pick. I'm certainly not going to James Harden. That scares me a little bit. So I'm going to go to the guy that I think that I am probably higher on than most. He is tied with Luka Doncic, but you do get the multiplier boost. I will take 1.3x multiplier De'Aaron Fox as my first selection. And then since I get to do the wraparound, I'm going to now head back to, you know what? I'm going to open it up. Since we are at one guard and one forward, I'll take whoever I want here. And I'm going to take a guy that I think that I am a little bit higher on than the public today, or at least it seemed it earlier. 1.35x multiplier, Kristaps Porzingis.
Interesting. Also, by the way, somebody Alex has rated really, really well. In Alex's projections, looks like he's Porzingis 7th. So, I mean, he's pretty high on him as well.
I have him 6th. And I don't know what position, Jordan, you're putting him into right now. Doesn't matter. We'll say we have the flexibility. He can go forward or center. We'll leave that open. You've got 2 more now. Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to go with a guard and a forward. First, a guard, John Wall, coming off of his 30-shot game. And I know somebody I saw, because I'm always scanning the YouTube chat and reading what people have to say, whether it be good or mean things to say about Josh and I. And I know that some people were saying, like, hey, John Wall, there's no way he shoots 30 times again. Yes, he's probably not going to shoot 30 times again, but I'm not. If he shoots 23 times, I'm not disappointed. Yeah, if he shoots 35, I'm not disappointed either. More so, I think we look at what happened last game. This Rocket team is going nowhere. John Wall might as well just go out and huck up as many shots as he could possibly get. So give me John Wall, and then also give me PJ Washington, who with a 1.6 multiplier on SuperDraft, matchup against Houston, who I mean, this Houston team, I know they won last game, but still they have lost. They had lost 21 games or 20 games in a row. And PJ Washington, who, by the way, Alex actually has 4th overall in his SuperDraft projections.
Give me 1 second. I would like PJ Washington to show up, but I don't have his name correct in my spreadsheet.
Oh.
Where's the SuperDraft column? There it is. SuperDraft. So he was not showing up, and I was like, well, that doesn't seem even remotely close to correct. Who's texting me? What's the wife want? My dog's just making super cute faces downstairs. I wish I could go see it. PJ Washington is 16th for me, so I don't have much of a problem there. 1.6 multiplier increases the error bars there. I like it. Does he have forward and center eligibility?
Just forward.
Okay. So I think we could probably move Kristaps Porzingis into that center spot and feel a little bit more comfortable. So what do we have left, Jordan? Are you in our ears?
We've taken 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center.
So we have a guard and a forward left, and that's it, right?
I believe so.
Perfect. Okay. I'll take 1. You take 1? Or do I need to take 2?
I'm a little Jordan, how many spots do we have left? Josh and I are stupid. All right.
There's spots. An odd amount of spots. So I'll take 1, you take 1.
No, there's an even amount of spots.
Yeah, but there's an odd amount of spots in the roster itself.
Oh, okay. All right.
There are 7 spots, so one of us is getting more than 1 no matter what.
Gotcha.
We'll close it out. We'll split it here. Final pick, guard or forward. Who is somebody that you know what? All right, so we already have John Wall. Do I want to go with the Rockets stack and get Christian Wood? Probably not. I'm going to go to the guy that I think has a pretty sizable floor. No one ever talks about really rostering him. I don't think we've said his name so far today, but he does rank as my number 5 play today. I will take Kawhi Leonard.
Oh, well, that is pretty far off the board for me. Definitely not somebody I was considering, Kawhi Leonard. I didn't get exposure to him on DraftKings today.
1.2 multiplier.
That does make a little bit of a difference. All right, guard. Let's see. We go to De'Aaron Fox, go to Zach LaVine.
Well, don't try going to De'Aaron Fox. He was my first pick.
Oh, that's true. Never mind. What's Halliburton's multiplier? 1.5. I'd like him to be a little bit more. Give me Zach LaVine. 1.25 multiplier for him on SuperDraft. Alex has him ranked, looks like right around 10th. There's your dog. I was looking down at the.
Somebody said, "Do you think Josh has a Yorkie?" I do not.
So Zach LaVine to finish us off.
I like it. I like Zach LaVine.
Zach LaVine, who, by the way, I bet to be the high scorer in the Bulls-Cavs game as soon as Colin Sexton was ruled out. That seems like a very likely outcome now.
Yeah, 1.25 multiplier for LaVine. We're printing money. If you guys want that lineup, take it. You can have it. It's goods. It's the goods. Tonight's starting lineup for the Denver Nuggets: Murray, Barton, Porter Jr., Millsap, and Jokic. Kind of knew that one was coming.
Yeah, no surprises there. See, any other news? No other news that's come across yet.
No. I do have a little bit of news, actually.
Oh, okay.
You ready for this?
Maybe. I don't know. It depends how big a news it is.
Hold on. It's loading now. I think it's because I think my web internet is slowing down because this news is so important. 956 of 1,900 entries into the SuperDraft jump shot, guys. You have 15 minutes to get into it, and it is half full. There's a decent chance at overlay, but they're going to be taking in another 1,000 entries, and that last 5 minutes, it's going to explode. So if you do want to get in now. And if you haven't signed up at SuperDraft, use the promo code Awesemo21. That's the news I've got. Hornets will start Graham, Rozier, Hayward, Washington, and Biyombo.
By the way, I just checked the latest ownership. James Harden's still projected for over 20% ownership right now. People not backing down off the injury news yet.
Craziness. Oh man, I really like Giannis tonight now.
Yeah, I mean, I played him in. He's my highest owned stud now with some of the other news that we've had. I'm pretty high on him and Luka also, but latest update when I updated for the Rockets news, I ended up getting to Giannis a little bit more than Luka on my final update.
I'm getting pictures of dogs now. Shout out to Giles in chat sending me a picture of English Bulldog that I just love the look of.
By the way, no, it is Bismack Biyombo is starting, not Cody Zeller. Somebody just asked that in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, they're going Biyombo, which I think is a mistake. I wouldn't be playing Bismack Biyombo at all. So that's also neither here nor there. Like, he would be out of my rotation and PJ Washington would be playing just the backup 5 minutes to Cody Zeller. Probably why I'm not a coach. Let's see if anybody has any questions or like super draft thoughts. Legalize, where the hell are you at? You play a super draft. We can give you the goods. I know you'll have questions. Go ahead and ask them. Sign up using the promo code Awesemo. 21, that is. What else we got coming in? Garland or Conley in a FanDuel GPP? That would be Garland.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
his price is cheap on FanDuel, right?
Garland's 5,500 on FanDuel. Conley is, I think it was 6,000. Conley, 5,800 for Conley. But yeah, I prefer Garland.
Gene has got the question, says, any love for hamsters? More of a gerbil guy myself.
Did he pay us money for that?
Armageddon. Anybody that knows the Armageddon audio, that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life.
All right, here's a question from CAC2112. Gordon Hayward or Jaylen Brown on FanDuel?
Gordon Hayward or Jaylen Brown? Jaylen Hayward. To me, Gordon Hayward is the best small forward play on the slate.
Yeah, I didn't play on FanDuel tonight, but in the dummy build I did for the purposes of this show, Gordon Hayward came out as my most rostered small forward.
So we just got this post from the News God in Premium Slack. I don't know what 48 minutes is as a website. However, Victor Oladipo is in the mix for the Blazers. I don't understand that fit at all. And in real news, Cedi Osman will get the start. Isaac Okoro moving to the 2, a shooting guard that does not shoot well.
Yeah, I mean, I love it for my DFS lineups. I don't necessarily love it for the Cavs' overall ability to win basketball games. But yeah, Cedi now easily one of the top value plays on the slate. That just locks that in.
Do you have any issue with Malik Monk's ownership on FanDuel, given he is not starting? I don't, because I didn't expect him to start.
No, if you look at the on-off court numbers for the Hornets this year, surprisingly, LaMelo Ball being off the court does not greatly impact any of the guys who's the starter, just in terms of a rate basis. The one guy it does impact the most in terms of usage is Malik Monk. The thing that makes the Malik Monk thing a little harder to figure out, though, is that he's not guaranteed to play big minutes. But we have seen games where Malik Monk has made a bunch of shots early and then they close with him and he ends up playing bigger minutes. So Malik Monk, I think for his price, he's a pretty considerable amount of upside on FanDuel.
I am with you. I was a fan earlier today. I'm a fan still. I don't love the ownership, but I understand why it's happening. And, given the upside that he has, I think he's a more than viable option. Cody Zeller available to play. Legalize makes the X-hamster joke, which I'm honestly a little bit mad that I didn't make. And then we've still got Lakers want Oladipo or Kemba.
So I also like the Lakers, where like the Lakers are in on, I don't know if it's still earlier, but like the Lakers would like to land Kyle Lowry. It's like, yeah, I'm sure they would. But
so that one I think that they could actually pull off depending on what the price is. But I mean, it's THT, their 2020 or their 2027 pick. And then, I mean, I assume KCP or Harrell have to go out, and I don't know how good that looks. But going to go out on a limb and say that Kemba Walker is not going to be on the Lakers anytime soon.
No. By the way, we do have a little bit of interesting news. Make of this what you will, from our friend Rabashua, who DM'd me in our premium Slack chat. He wants to notify me that the money line is moving in the Nets Jazz game in favor of the Jazz.
Interesting. Let's take a look. Check that out. You guys can see that at OddsShopper. Go to oddshopper.awesemo.com if you want to scope out betting lines. It's the best place on the planet that you can do that. Looks like, I mean, it was, line was 11. It's 11.5 in some places now. If I go to a particular sports book that I would like to see, at 447, the Nets were plus 460. They are now plus 507. So while it's moving, it's not really moving. When it gets to that big of a spread, the money line is marginal movements. It's usually more of a juice thing than anything else. But it is definitely moving in the opposite way of the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing too is, even if Harden plays, the Nets are really unlikely to win this game. Obviously, it could happen. Harden's been playing out of his mind. The Nets have been terrific lately, but if you're going to rest Harden in any spot, it might as well be this one. And again, they're most likely going to lose anyway.
I would agree wholeheartedly. We have 9 minutes to go until lock. The jump shot on SuperDraft has about 800 empty seats. The Super 8 has a similar amount. You can get into that one for $10 less. If you make a $50 deposit, you get a $50 bonus using the promo code Awesemo21. That's $100 right there. 100 smackers. You could enter the Super 8 12 times if you would like. Still have a couple bucks left over. Or you could take that 100. You could put 100 entries into their 5K and one $1 entry. You can 150 max it. On $100, you can't. Obviously, you can only get 100, but still worth the shot. If you're ever trying to MME, get your feet wet at SuperDraft. Any low for Harrison Barnes today? No. Like he is viable in that he plays huge minutes, and I think that's okay. I would say that there's like a 2% chance that he just doesn't play tonight because he gets traded, but I don't really see that coming.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a small forward on FanDuel that isn't picking up that much, I assume that was a FanDuel question. Did he say FanDuel?
Did I answer a question?
Well, no, the Harrison Barnes thing.
No, there was no.
Okay, because I mean, Harrison Barnes is 6,500 on DraftKings. That's not a consideration at all. On FanDuel, he's much more reasonably priced at 6,000. But if I'm going to a contrarian small forward option on FanDuel, it's OG Anunoby, 5,400, picking up 7% ownership. I still think there's a chance that just some part in the game, either Kyle Lowry only plays limited minutes, they take him out at halftime or something like that. The other thing too, OG Anunoby, 5,400. That's a much cheaper price point than we normally get from him. Also, somebody particular to FanDuel, the defensive stats give him a pretty significant amount of upside. So Anunoby also no more minutes restriction. His price came down a little bit because he came back from COVID with limited minutes that led to less production, a lower price. So Anunoby is actually one of the contrarian plays that I liked on this slate. I had to lower his ownership a little bit because when I first did a build, it was like, oh my God, Anunoby showing up in everything. That was also because I was assuming that Lowry wasn't going to play and possibly Norm Powell, but just the chance that one of those guys get traded during the game and OG Anunoby already being underpriced, I think he's a good upside play for low ownership.
Shout out to the other boss man, Tom, showing up in premium Slack, letting everybody know there's still some spots to be found in SuperDraft's Jump Shot and the Super 8. Lots of spots left, 700 to be exact. You've got 6 minutes to get in. And is that real?
Is what real?
I'm going to boot this dude quick. Goodbye you for a bit. Take a break. That can just go away. Cleveland starters: Garland, Okoro, Osman, Nance, and Allen. Don't really have anything to add there. That's exactly what we sort of knew for the past couple minutes. 5 minutes left to go. We still have some news coming in. Let's see what else we've got. Yeah, it's tame. It's tame. It's coming though. It is absolutely coming.
Yeah, it's all going to come at the same time too. It
usually does.
That it does. So players that are still questionable: James Harden being the big one, obviously. Danilo Gallinari, that has a little bit of significance. That's going to open up some playing time on the wing for the Hawks. Those are the only two important players that are still listed as questionable. James Harden. Ideally, when would you like the James Harden news to come out? Would you prefer it comes out at 9:40, or would you like it to come now?
So I'm a child. So admittedly, I don't really care when it comes out. The moment that I sign off of the show, I'm not going to see anything that happens in the NBA. But if I were playing, I would like the James Harden news to come out at like 9:45.
All right. I would
actually,
like
you know what? No, honestly, 9:58, because I would run my backup crunch the moment the Clippers Spurs game ended or started. And I would already have what I wanted ready to go, which is what every single person should be doing. The moment you get to 8:31 and nothing has come out, do the work then, so you don't have to scramble for it.
So my answer is right around 7:50. The reason being is because that leaves me a lot of pivot options, right? Where I could move guys around and kind of make reasonable lineups with the James Harden news. And I still don't think people would be able to react to the news in time. The issue with it coming out at like 9:50 is that there just aren't moves. Most players have been locked at that point. So
that's a good point. Everything that I just said is the same for 8 o'clock. Right now, you should be doing that work for everything from 7:30 on. Once the 7:30 game's locked, you should redo that work with Harden out for everything from 8 o'clock on. Like, that's the real easy way to do it. Just have your crunch locked and loaded already.
Let's see if we have any other
4
questions.
minutes left. That much I could tell you. And we are getting dangerously close to Super Draft Lock. We do not have any new news, but Wayne Ellington did just check in with Josh Jackson. So I don't remember seeing it, but shout out to Wayne Ellington being available. The jump shot, once this refreshes, and I assume it's just because we're sending so much traffic to SuperDraft, a little slow. 600 spots left in the jump shot, about 500 left in the Super 8 at $18 an entry. 1666 is the break-even spot. If they get anything more than that, but they don't fill, you're paying reduced rake. If they don't get to 1666, they're kind of paying you to be in it. You can't beat it.
Nope, there is no better EV than overlay, because there's no play that's going to be guaranteed to turn a profit, but overlay that is going to turn a profit over an extended period of time. Let's see. What other question? Anybody have questions, by the way? We've got a couple minutes to go here. We could definitely answer some questions. Looking in our Slack chat right now.
Jay Lopez, if you're really asking the question, Dean Wade love, just unragged today.
All right. Dean Wade, just for poops and giggles. Dean Wade, I have scoring 13 fantasy points.
I have him scoring 16, which makes him equally unplayable today.
Yes. Unless you have him for like, I don't know, like 25-ish fantasy points or something like that is what you need to get from him on a slate like this. And that's a projection that's nearly impossible to get to for him.
I got to get this joke out.
Is it that important?
Kind of. Not an audible joke. This is a Slack joke. Let's see what else we've got here. Yeah, there we go. That's a good one. 2 minutes to go, guys. This is your last chance. Awesemo 21, AWESEMO 21. If you haven't signed up at SuperDraft, they're up to 1550 in the jump shot. We're getting dangerously close to that break-even mark, but even reduced rake is what you're looking for. 400 additional entries left in the Super 8. The fadeaway is a little short of filling. There's 1,000 open spots in the $5,000 guaranteed and one. That's the tournament you can get in for $1. If you're there, just start jamming lineups in as quickly as you can, because that's perfect for you guys. 49 seconds. What do you expect? What's the craziest thing you see tonight for the rest of the night before we sign off?
James Harden plays like 26 minutes.
Okay.
Just the ultimate troll job. The ultimate troll job.
Victor Oladipo is a New York Knick.
Oh, that'd be interesting. What would they trade to make that happen?
Who cares? Nothing.
Taj Gibson.
Somebody crappy. Kevin Knox plus something else.
I'll say also Kyle Lowry and Norman Powell traded halftime of the Raptors game.
Oh, Jesus. Now that would be something else. But guys, that is it. 730. They got to 1774 or maybe slightly more. So you're getting reduced rake in the jump shot. You're getting reduced rake in the Super 8. Clear across the board. You had overlay. That's what you're looking for, guys. That will help you build your bankroll. If you can limit the amount that's going out as essentially fees, that's the way to do it. That's all I've got. Greg, any final thoughts? Tell the people where they should be at 9 p.m. tonight.
They should be watching the late slate live before lock show. I'm going to do it with Chris Spags. Here's why. James Harden news presumably is going to come out at some point during that 9 to 10 p.m. Range. We're going to be breaking down whatever video of him warming up again, whatever else it is. But it's going to be a lot of James Harden talk, because what else are they going to be talking about for that hour?
Wall, Brown, House, Tate, Wood, the starting lineup for the Houston Rockets. And that is it. Guys, thank you very much. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys again in the morning, but make sure you're watching late live before lock tonight at 9, because it's going to be a crazy one.